Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of steam, whispers, and warm marble floors, a place where women ruled quietly behind closed doors, away from the eyes of men and the noise of the empire. We're talking about the female bathhouses of the Ottoman Empire. If you've ever pictured hammams as just places to get scrubbed and sweaty, well, buckle up, because what you're about to walk into is equal parts beauty, danger, ritual, and scandal. And honestly, you probably won't survive this. At least not without catching a few secret glances, some politically charged gossip, and maybe a splash of perfumed water in your eye. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know what city you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. I love knowing which corner of the world you're listening from while we travel through time together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the entrance of a grand stone building, low and domed, like it's trying to huddle in against the weight of centuries. The walls are thick, holding in heat and stories alike. You pull your shawl tighter, adjusting the hem of your antari as you look up at the arched doorway. This isn't your average wash-up spot. This is the neighbourhood hammam, part wellness centre, part social theatre, part political salon. You push the wooden door open and step into the first chamber, your shoes echoing faintly against the tile. The air hits you first, warm, humid, and heavy with rosewater and lemongrass. There's laughter in the distance, women's voices, lively and uncharted. You're already sweating a little, but it's not unpleasant. A sturdy woman with silver-threaded hair and a practiced smile welcomes you, gesturing for your clothes. There's no awkwardness in the exchange. Modesty here is a flexible concept. You're draped in a thin pestimel, a wrap that covers what needs covering but still lets the heat kiss your skin. You move through the kamakan, the outer dressing room, a high-ceilinged rotunda lined with wooden changing booths and velvet cushions. Light streams in through tiny star-shaped holes in the dome, dancing like constellations on the floor. Wealthier women lounge here, sipping sherbet and fanning themselves slowly, like lazy cats sunbathing. Their jewellery clinks as they talk, and you already sense that whatever is said in this room won't stay in this room for long. The door to the inner chambers opens and steam rolls out like a living thing. You pass through a second room, the illichlic, warmer still but not scorching. This is where your body adjusts, where you begin to soften, melt even. You breathe deep. The air is thick with eucalyptus, and under it all, something sharper. Olive oil, soap maybe. The sound of running water is constant, like a hush being kept alive. And then you step into the hot room, the heart of the bathhouse. This is where it all happens. The floor is a giant slab of marble, heated from below, glowing faintly like the inside of a shell. Women sprawl across it, slick with sweat and suds, their voices echoing off the stone. Steam curls upward in gentle tendrils, blurring the edges of everything. Privacy is both impossible and irrelevant here. You're anonymous in your skin, one of many. You lie down on the Gobek Tassi, the central belly stone, and feel your muscles surrender to the heat. The surface is smooth, just on the edge of too hot. It presses into your back like a giant sun-warmed palm. Around you, other women chat in low tones. Some are being scrubbed by telaks, female attendants with strong hands and little patience. Dead skin flies like eraser shavings. One woman lets out a yelp that turns into a laugh. Another sings softly, eyes closed, lost in memory or fantasy. This place right now is all women. No men, no expectations, no tight corsets or watchful eyes. Here you are not mother, not wife, not servant or noblewoman. You are flesh, steam, voice. Historically, hammams like this one were essential to Ottoman urban life. They were everywhere, in cities, towns, villages, even in the depths of the imperial palace. Part of Islamic tradition, yes, but also deeply woven into the social fabric. Men had their hammams, of course, but the women's bathhouses became whole ecosystems of their own. The separation allowed for freedom of movement, of speech, and yes, of intrigue. The quirky part, these bathhouses weren't just tolerated, they were celebrated. Women weren't sneaking away, they were expected to go, weekly visits were common, and missing your hammam day was almost suspicious. Think of it like skipping brunch with your social circle, but add exfoliation, scented oil, and multi-generational matchmaking. Some women even brought servants or elaborate trays of sweets to show off. Imagine peacocking, but in steam, there's a scholarly debate that still hangs in the mist though. How much power did women really have here? Some historians argue that bathhouses offered rare autonomy, spaces where business was discussed, marriages arranged, and secrets traded. Others believe that these were still extensions of patriarchal life, strictly regulated, surveilled, and limited to illusionary freedom. After all, the rules of the empire didn't vanish with your clothes. Even in steam, hierarchies persisted. But as you lie back on the warm marble, and a telak begins to massage scented foam into your skin, that debate feels far away. Right now, the only thing that matters is the heater, the laughter, and the faint chime of gold bangles from somewhere in the mist. The bathhouse may be wrapped in secrets, but tonight, it wraps around you too. The moment you think you've acclimated to the heat, the telak, the bathhouse attendant, gives you a knowing smile and tilts your head slightly, guiding you toward the edge of the belly stone. You shuffle over, warm marble underfoot, your pestimal clinging to your damp skin. Around you, mist swirls like stage smoke. Only this theatre has no curtains, no stagehands, just steam, whispers, and centuries of womanhood. She leads you to a basin carved from stone, wide and shallow, worn smooth by the hands of countless women before you. Water trickles in steadily from a bronze spout shaped like a tulip. The telak dips a small copper bowl into the water and pours it slowly over your head. The first shock of heat makes you gasp, then melt. She does it again and again. You're not just bathing, you're dissolving. It's here, within this hypnotic rhythm, that you start to notice the architecture. You're standing in a space designed not only to function, but to seduce, to soothe, to disarm. The domed ceiling above you has small glass discs embedded in its surface, letting in tiny shafts of sunlight that pierce the steam like needles of gold. The acoustics are perfect. Every drop of water, every giggle, every low hum of conversation bounces back just a little softened, like secrets being repeated with a hush. The walls are lined with intricate tilework, blue and white, floral and geometric, repeating patterns that spiral into the abstract. Your eyes follow one vine-like motif until it vanishes behind a pillar, and you can't help but wonder how many women have stared at that same line, lost in thought. This wasn't accidental. Ottoman architects knew what they were doing. Hammams were built not just as hygienic spaces, but as sacred ones. The heat, the symmetry, the cascading water, the light, all of it was crafted to simulate a kind of paradise. In fact, some scholars argue that bathhouses were intentionally modelled after Islamic ideas of heaven. Gardens with flowing rivers, sensual beauty, spiritual peace, and after all, cleanliness is considered half of faith, but the hammam offered more than religious duty. It gave women a realm all their own, a place where they didn't just exist, they thrived. You wander a little now, barefoot and quiet, observing the layout with fresh eyes. Every chamber transitions to the next like a series of breathing lungs. Warm, warmer, hottest. Each room has niches carved into the walls, some holding soap or oils, others holding nothing but marmon. There are benches where women sit together, combing each other's hair or trading gossip with arched brows and mock whispers. Some corners seem to invite solitude, while others buzz with motion and energy. The genius of the architecture is that it shapes behaviour. You can't rush in a hammam, you can't multitask, there are no mirrors, no clocks, no urgent knocks on doors. You're forced to be present, to move slowly, breathe deeply, and become aware of the space your body takes up in the world. Every tile, every curve of marble nudges you towards surrender. And surrender here is power. But then there's something else too, something more playful. You notice how the space allows for little glances, spontaneous interactions, moments of performance. One woman flips her hair over her shoulder with practiced drama. Another adjusts her pestimal just enough to flash an envious waistline. Two girls chase each other with bowls of water, shrieking when a splash hits. There's an underlying sensuality, not erotic necessarily, but embodied. This is a space where the female form is not hidden or judged, but celebrated. You're struck by the comfort, the confidence. No one is sucking in their stomach or checking their reflection. They're just here. Quirk alert. In certain elite bathhouses, it wasn't uncommon to find small hidden features designed purely for luxury. We're talking about niches carved into walls specifically to hold silver trays of sweet tea, or even tiny fountains that burbled cold rosewater so the ladies could dip their fingers or cool their temples. In some royal hammams, there were even secret passages, private entrances used by high-ranking women or concubines so they wouldn't have to mingle with the public. One palace hammam reportedly had a viewing gallery, built discreetly into its dome, where eunuchs or guards could monitor the space without being seen. Creepy? A little. Ingenious? Absolutely. There's a scholarly debate that touches on this, actually. Some researchers believe these architectural luxuries were signs of feminist agency, that women shaped these spaces for their own pleasure and autonomy. Others argue the opulence was simply an extension of courtly excess, more about hierarchy than freedom. After all, not every woman had a marble slab heated by a hippocaust beneath her. Most commoners used more modest hammams, still steamy, still beautiful, but missing the hidden cold fountains and mosaic domes. As you move back toward the bellystone, you pass through a section with slightly cooler air. Here, a young woman is having her hair oiled by an older relative. Their heads are close, foreheads nearly touching. It's intimate, soft. A mother brushing her daughter's curls, a sister rubbing almond oil into a scalp. These moments, too, are built into the architecture. The hammam nurtures both solitude and connection. Every alcove has its own mood. You can sit in silence or in storytelling. You can exist loudly or gently, You return to your place on the warm stone. Another pour of water. Another rub of soap. You've become part of the rhythm now. Stone, water, woman, steam. The walls continue to hold their stories, but you're beginning to understand their language. One drop at a time. The hours slide by in the hammam, not that anyone's counting. Time here is more of a suggestion than a schedule. You feel loose now, your limbs no longer tense, your thoughts softened at the edges like paper left in the rain. But behind all this warmth and calm, something else simmers beneath the surface. Because this isn't just a bathhouse, it's a woman's world. And in the Ottoman Empire, that means a place with rules, power dynamics, and a whole different language spoken without a single word. You begin to notice the subtle currents flowing through the marble. Look closer at the group of women huddled near the back wall, sitting low and speaking in short bursts. One wears gold hoops, large enough to double as bracelets. Another has a pestimal wrapped high and tight, not a wrinkle out of place. You realise this isn't casual chatter, it's strategy. It's the same kind of quiet manoeuvring that happens in marketplaces, courts and councils, only here it's softened by steam and the scent of jasmine oil. The hammam gives women something the rest of the empire often denies: agency. Out there, they're bound by family, marriage, custom. In here, they network, they negotiate, they observe, and most importantly, they influence. If you're looking to arrange a marriage, float a rumour, or forge an alliance, you don't do it in the street, you do it here, preferably while scrubbing someone's back or sharing sweet sherbet between baths. A woman glides past you now, trailing a whiff of sandalwood and superiority. She's older, regal, and doesn't speak unless spoken to, but when she does speak, heads tilt subtly in her direction. She might be the wife of a local merchant, or maybe the sister of someone higher up. No one says exactly, but the way the other women laugh a little too loudly at her jokes, or lean in just a touch when she moves closer. Yeah, this woman holds social gravity, and she knows it. In fact, many hammams had their own internal hierarchies. Unofficial, of course, but impossible to miss. Wealthier women arrived with attendants, perfumes, embroidered towels. They occupied the best corners of the bellystone and received first attention from the telex. They brought trays of sweets or gold-threaded fans, and the message was clear: I belong here, and you know it. Meanwhile, lower-status women kept to the edges, more observers than participants. But even they played the game. A sharp word, a well-timed compliment, a whispered confession. They could climb the invisible ladder if they played it right. And gossip? Oh, it flows here like the water from those copper bowls. Not loud or dramatic, that would be vulgar. No, the really juicy information travels in low tones, couched in metaphors. Someone's daughter has been seen too often near the apothecary. Someone else's son is being distracted from his studies. By whom, you ask? Well, the steam fog's more than just windows. But don't worry, you'll find out. Eventually. there's a historical fact hiding in that mist. Ottoman society was heavily patriarchal on paper, but in practice women, especially elite or connected women, wielded soft power through relationships. The hammam was one of their tools. It gave them the chance to build alliances, collect favours, and pass on their version of events. Political wives, merchants' daughters, even midwives and wet nurses, they all passed through here, their influence rising like the heat. And yet not all historians agree on how free this space really was. Some argue the bathhouse gave women a false sense of control. Sure, they could socialise, gossip, and even manipulate, but always within a space defined and monitored by the men outside. The walls may have muffled their voices, but they didn't erase the surveillance. Others insist that the hammam was revolutionary, a rare crack in the male-dominated structure where female identity and power could breathe. And the truth is probably somewhere between the soap bubbles. A quirky fact slides into focus as you watch a cluster of girls braid each other's hair. Did you know some hammams offered entertainment services? Not scandalous, don't get excited, but musical performers, storytellers, even astrologers who'd chart your fortune while your skin was being exfoliated. In some cities, hammam goers could request henna artists, poets, or even amateur chefs to prepare delicacies while they soaked. These add-ons weren't cheap, but they made bathhouses into events, not just errands. You spot a girl, maybe 15, nervously fidgeting with the edge of her wrap. Her mother sits beside her, whispering occasionally, glancing around. This is the girl's first real hammam visit, not for washing, but for watching. She's here to learn the social rules, how to smile without revealing too much, how to compliment without sounding envious, how to be noticed without being obvious. Think of it as Ottoman finishing school, only instead of a parlour, it's a sauna. You lean back and let the echo of laughter drift over you. This isn't just a gathering, it's a rehearsal. Roles are played here: hostess, confidant, rival, protector. And like any good performance, it changes depending on the audience. In the far corner, a pair of women are trading stories about their children. But the edge in their voices says they're not just swapping parenting advice, they're measuring each other. Whose son is studying law? Whose daughter just received a marriage proposal from a wealthy trader's family? The competition is soft, almost loving but unmistakable. Compliments are given, then pulled back just slightly by tone or timing. It's all very polite, and quietly ruthless. You begin to understand that the hammam isn't just a space, it's a system, a kind of informal parliament where power is exchanged in glances and laughter, where truths are massaged out of you like tension in your shoulders. You may walk in with a body that needs cleaning, but you leave with a mind full of calculations and a few fresh pieces of gossip wrapped up like Turkish delight. The stone beneath you is cooling slightly. Your telak returns, pressing a fresh cloth to your back. The session isn't over. The politics are just heating up. You don't realise how thoroughly you've surrendered to the hammam until someone pulls you up, gently but firmly, and motions for you to follow. Your legs wobble a little as you rise from the belly stone, like you've left your bones behind, traded them in for steam and soap. The attendant leads you toward a different corner of the Hararet, this one even hotter, almost blinding with mist. Here, you'll learn that bathing in the Ottoman Empire was never just a splash and go. No, this is ritual, a ceremony of cleansing that unfolds in slow, sensual stages. It's about washing, but it's also about transforming. You sit on a small marble bench, your back pressed against warm tile, and the telak sets to work again. This time she's brought the kees, a rough mitt made from raw silk or coarse goat hair. You've heard of this, you've been warned. The keesi isn't here to pamper, it's here to shed, and not just skin. She begins at your shoulders, scrubbing in firm circular strokes. You flinch at first, shocked by how intense it is, then you look down, slivers of greyish skin curl off your arm like pencil shavings. It's both horrifying and satisfying. The attendant hums softly, unfazed, like she's done this 1,000 times. And she has. You're in the hands of someone who knows exactly what your body can endure, and exactly how much to push before you yelp. It's an odd mix, the rawness of being stripped down and the dignity of it being done so carefully. Here, exfoliation is almost sacred. You're not just cleaning yourself, you're renewing yourself. Think of it as shedding your outer layer, not just the physical one, but all the mental clutter that comes with living in a society where you're expected to be composed, quiet, modest, agreeable. In this space, you're allowed to dissolve. This process, called temizlik or cleansing, is steeped in both religious significance and cultural tradition. In Islamic practice, purity has long been linked with spiritual cleanliness. But in the Ottoman hammam, that concept expanded to include social, emotional, even erotic dimensions. The act of washing became layered with meaning. To cleanse oneself was to be reborn. To be scrubbed by another woman, especially one skilled in the technique, was a form of intimacy that bordered on the mystical. And the tools of this ritual weren't casual either. The kese, the soap, the oil, the basins, all carefully chosen, prepared, and even passed down. Some women brought their own mitts, passed from mother to daughter, softened by use and memory. Others preferred specific olive oil soaps, infused with laurel, myrtle, or lavender. And let's not forget the buckets, made of copper or even silver, engraved with calligraphy or symbols for luck and fertility. A bath was never just a bath. It was a practice, a lifestyle. The quirky part, there were scrub rankings. Seriously, a good telak was like a celebrity. Women requested them by name, and stories circulated about their skills. The one who could make your skin feel like silk, or the one who hit the exact nerve in your shoulder that made you see stars. Some telaks were known for their strength, others for their gentleness, and a few for their sharp tongues and unsolicited advice. Getting the good scrubber was a status symbol in itself. The hammam grapevine kept their reputations alive and sizzling. Now, there's also a scholarly debate simmering under all this steam. Some historians argue that the ritual of being washed by another woman, especially in a society that emphasized modesty and gender segregation, created a space where non-heteronormative expressions could quietly exist. Not overtly, not publicly, but in gesture, in closeness, in moments. Others push back, insisting that while the experience was intimate, it remained within the boundaries of communal female bonding, and that projecting modern sexuality onto historical customs risks distorting them. As always, the truth is steamy and unclear. You close your eyes as water is poured over your head again, rinsing away everything the Kizi removed. For a moment, you are nothing but skin and heat and breath, no thoughts, no names, just sensation. The telak switches to a soft cloth now, patting you down gently, as if she's coaxing your soul back into your body. She hums a tune you don't recognize, low and rhythmic. It sticks in your chest like a lullaby. In the next chamber, another woman is being washed by two attendants at once. One works her shoulders, the other massages oil into her feet. It looks indulgent, excessive even, but also deeply human. You wonder if she's royalty, or just someone who knows how to spend her silver. Either way, she floats through the process like she's been here 100 times. You admire her, or envy her. It's hard to tell the difference when your brain is this boiled. Eventually, your attendant steps back and wraps you in a fresh pestimol, soft and warm from a hidden brazier. Your skin tingles, pink and raw but alive. You're guided back to the intermediate chamber, the iliklik, where cooler air brushes against your face like a mud. Women sit here in soft piles, sipping tea or munching on candied fruits, their cheeks flushed, eyes half-lidded in bliss. You sink onto a cushion, unsure if your legs will ever fully re-solidify. Around you, conversation buzzes again, but it feels gentler now. Post-rinse talk is always slower. The stakes have lowered. You've all been peeled open together. Your secrets may still be yours, but your skin has been made communal. Someone offers you a date, sticky and sweet. You take it with a nod. Everything tastes more vivid now, like you've been reset. A young woman across from you is being dried by her sister with practiced tenderness. Their eyes meet in a way that says more than words. No drama, just trust. It reminds you of how many relationships are strengthened in these rituals, not just romantic or political, but familial. Mothers and daughters, aunts and nieces, friends who speak in half sentences and still understand each other. You take another sip of tea. The hammam isn't done with you yet. You've just passed through one layer. The next one waits, deeper still. The bathhouse has a quiet moods and noisy ones, and now, in the iliklik, it's hitting a soft lull. You're stretched across a cushion like a cat in the sun, robe loose, limbs warm and half-liquid. You've reached the rare state of being clean, pampered, and fully unavailable for responsibility. A state humans should really aim for more often. You take another sip of warm tea, apple, slightly spiced, just tart enough to make your mouth pucker, and let the flow of conversation drift over you. This is when the true hammam language begins to emerge, not in full sentences, but in looks, in the raise of an eyebrow, in the subtle way a woman sits a little closer to and there and lets her robe fall just slightly off one shoulder. It's not about seduction, it's about power, about control over how much you reveal and to whom. You realise now this bathhouse is a place where women test each other, where reputations are polished, dulled, or occasionally boiled clean off. The group seated near you is deep in conversation. An older woman with gold-threaded slippers, a middle-aged matron with a face like she's always judging you, and a younger woman who is clearly trying to prove herself without being obvious about it. They speak in veiled terms, but the intent is sharp. Something about a merchant's second wife who's been seen lingering too long at a neighbour's gate. You don't know who they're talking about, but the tone is universal. Scandal, cloaked in civility. Gossip in the hammam is its own art form. It's not shouted or spilled, it's steeped. You brew it slowly, let it settle, then serve it just hot enough to burn. In fact, many Ottoman women preferred to hold major conversations here rather than at home. The hammam offered plausible deniability. After all, what's said in the bath stays in the bath. No one's wearing jewellery they'd risk over a lie. And the acoustics? Perfect for whispering and pretending you didn't hear something you absolutely did. One of the most fascinating realities of Ottoman hammam culture is how deeply intertwined it became with social currency. Invitations to the hammam weren't casual, they were strategic. Being asked to join a particular woman or group said something about your status, your reputation, and your potential usefulness. Declining too often, that raised eyebrows. Showing up too often, equally suspect. You had to walk the line, popular but not desperate, sociable but not gossip-hungry. And it wasn't just talk. You notice a woman across the room setting out a small box, a jewellery case, lacquered and lined with velvet. She opens it slowly, like she's revealing state secrets, and inside are bracelets, rings and earrings glittering even in the dim light. This isn't just vanity, it's display. Gold bangles aren't merely decorative, they're announcements. They say, I married well, or my dowry was generous, or sometimes I'm a better investment than your daughter-in-law. It's hard to argue with 24-karat logic. A quirky historical fact floats up from the cushions. In some Ottoman cities, women would use the bathhouse as a reverse marketplace. That is, instead of going to buy something, they went to be seen, to be noticed by prospective mothers-in-law or matchmaking aunties who were watching for good posture, polite conversation, and smooth skin. Women who bathed frequently and presented themselves well had a better chance of being considered refined, healthy, and ripe for marriage. Yes, you were literally being clouted while exfoliating. You shift slightly on the cushion, feeling a new layer of self-consciousness settle in. Every gesture here has weight. Even how you sip your tea or how loudly you laugh could be interpreted as too bold, too shy, too eager, or just right. No wonder some women bring sweet trays or small gifts. Almond pastries, candied rose petals, embroidered handkerchiefs. These aren't just offerings, they're social armour. There's a woman nearby, maybe in her late 20s, showing off a little too obviously. Her pestamel is cinched high and tight, her bangles are too many for comfort, and she's laughing just a bit too loud. No one says anything outright, but you catch the way another woman glances sideways at her and murmurs something behind a raised hand. It's not cruel exactly, it's just the natural law of hammam society. You overplay your hand and the room notices. Some scholars argue that this particular layer of hammam life, the subtle pecking order, the jewellery flaunting, the veiled barbs, was one of the few ways women in the empire could exert power over each other in a world that largely denied them public status. If you couldn't hold political office or own property freely, then your currency became social. Built from stories, alliances and visual cues, others push back, saying this created toxic in-group dynamics and reinforced class divisions. Both views hold water, like the basins that are constantly being refilled around you. And let's not forget the gift economy. Hammams weren't just for social climbing, they were also for social maintenance. If a woman had recently married or given birth, she might host a special hammam day, bringing in sweets, oils and musicians to celebrate. These party days could get lavish. A woman might spend a small fortune making sure every guest left full, perfumed and thoroughly impressed. Because in a culture where reputation travelled faster than caravans, these little luxuries were investments. A single gesture of generosity could echo through 10 neighbourhoods. You finish your tea and rise slowly, feeling the pestamel loosen around your hips. Around you, women begin preparing for the next round of bathing, or perhaps for departure, but not before one more round of strategic conversation, one more trade of glances, one more test of the pecking order. A woman you've never spoken to gives you a look, neutral, assessing, curious. It lands like a question you haven't been asked aloud. Who are you, and what are you doing here? You don't answer, not out loud. You meet her gaze, lift your chin slightly, and adjust your pestomol with just enough flair to suggest you've done this before, even if you haven't, especially if you haven't. Because in this world of steam and subtleties, sometimes the biggest secret is simply knowing how to act like you know. There's a sudden shift in the energy of the hammam, subtle but unmistakable. It's in the way the telaks begin moving more deliberately, the way a few women straighten their posture and glance toward the door, and how one elderly matron flicks her wrist like a conductor, calling the next movement of a symphony. You catch the scent of something new, orange blossom maybe, with a powdery sweetness that clings to the air. Then it becomes clear. A bridal party has arrived, and just like that, the hammam becomes a stage. You scoot back on your cushion instinctively, giving space as the entourage sweeps in like a silk-draped storm. At the centre is the bride-to-be, wrapped in a pestomol that's finer than most, woven with tiny silver threads that sparkle against the steam. Her hair is tied back with a ribbon, her cheeks flushed, either from excitement or nerves or the sheer heat. Probably all three. She's surrounded by female relatives, friends, and at least one cousin who's clearly here more for the spectacle than the sisterhood. Pre-wedding hammam visits, gelin hamami or bride's bath, are no casual spa days. This is a rite of passage, a public farewell to girlhood and a theatrical welcome to womanhood complete with symbolic gestures, teasing rituals, and a whole lot of splashing. The bride is both guest of honour and the main course. She's expected to be admired, pampered, scrubbed, and emotionally overwhelmed, often in that exact order. Women circle around her, cooing, adjusting her wrap, whispering little jokes that make her giggle and blush. Her mother watches with a mix of pride and sadness, the look of someone letting go even if she's done this before with the other daughters. Someone begins to sing a low, steady folk song, and another picks it up, her voice cracking slightly in the humidity. It's the kind of melody that feels older than anyone in the room, the kind that probably hasn't been written down in centuries but has been passed through generations like a family secret. The bride is led to the gobektacy, the belly stone, and laid down like an offering. Her attendants, usually close friends, start to wash her in a slow ceremonial fashion. The motions are graceful and deliberate, lathering, rinsing, combing her hair, massaging her hands. It's not just about cleaning her skin, it's about cleansing her past, removing any traces of childhood mischief, heartbreak, even doubt. She'll walk out of this bathhouse a different woman, or so the tradition promises. A historical fact floats into your memory. These bridal hammam ceremonies date back centuries and were central to the wedding preparations in many Ottoman regions. Some brides were bathed with water from 7 basins, symbolising abundance, fertility, and the washing away of old burdens. In wealthier families, musicians were hired to perform live inside the bathhouse, their instruments wrapped in cloth to protect them from the steam. Some women even composed specific verses to tease the groom's family, or praise the bride's virtues. It was part entertainment, part public statement, and yes, the teasing could get intense. A fringe fact you might not expect. In some towns, the bride's friends would sing playful, slightly scandalous songs that hinted at her upcoming wedding night. Imagine being surrounded by your aunties and cousins, while women chant verses about soft sheets and long-awaited unions. It was meant to embarrass her, just enough, a nudge into adulthood. A rite dipped in laughter and lavender oil. There's a debate among scholars about just how much the bride enjoyed all this attention. Was it empowering or overwhelming? A celebration of her future role, or a final reminder of everything she was expected to be? The line blurs. Some women likely relished the spotlight, soaking in the praise and knowing this would be a highlight in their memory. Others probably felt the pressure pressing down like the heat in the hararat. After all, this was more than a bath, it was a transformation ceremony, and those are rarely gentle. You watch as someone produces a small tray from beneath a linen cloth. On it, rosewater, dried herbs, tiny gold coins, and what looks like a folded kerchief with intricate needlework. These are gifts for the bride, tokens meant to bring luck, prosperity, fertility. One woman places a coin on the bride's stomach and lets it sit for a moment before gently pressing it down and whispering something in her ear. Maybe a blessing. Maybe advice she doesn't want anyone else to hear. The whole room has shifted now. Even women who aren't part of the bridal party are watching with a sort of reverence, like witnessing something ancient and unspoken. It doesn't matter if they've done this themselves or only ever watched from the sidelines. Everyone plays a part. A few smile, one or two quietly wipe away a tear. And then, in true hammam fashion, the reverence breaks with a splash. One of the younger girls tosses a bowl of water too enthusiastically, and the bride squeals as her hair is soaked. Laughter erupts, light, high, irresistible. Just like that, the tension lifts. Women start singing again, this time faster, louder. The bride gets her own back with a splash that soaks her cousin's pestimal. Suddenly it's a water fight, and propriety takes a back seat. Everyone's laughing now. In this moment, they're not mothers, daughters, wives or widows. They're just women. Free, wet, radiating joy. You can't help but smile. You don't know the bride, but you feel her. The nervous excitement. The weight of expectation wrapped in rosewater. The bittersweet mix of leaving something behind and stepping into something unknown. She'll leave this bathhouse glowing. Maybe not from the scrubbing alone. Maybe from the way a room full of women just told her, "We see you. We've been you, and we've survived." By now, you've settled into the rhythm of the hammam, its cycles of steam, laughter, and lingering touches. But as the bridal party winds down, reluctantly drying off, rewrapping, and retreating to the cooler rooms, you notice something else rise up in the silence they leave behind. A change in the temperature, yes, but also in tone. The heat is heavier. The air thickens, and with it, the atmosphere shifts from celebration to something more charged. Whispered conversations get quieter. Glances become sharper. Women draw closer, but their voices dip lower. You've reached the part of the hammam where secrets float to the surface like steam from the stones. Here, beneath the domes and behind the veils of mist, things are said that can't be said anywhere else, not in kitchens, not even behind bedroom doors. The bathhouse is one of the few places where a woman can drop her mask, not just literally, but socially. The absence of men creates a temporary vacuum, and in that vacuum, truth creeps in, or maybe lies disguised as truth. Either way, they're shared here, washed down the drains or folded into someone else's story. You're near one of the more private alcoves now, where the steam doesn't hang as thick, and the marble is cooled just enough to encourage sitting. Two women speak in hushed tones, their knees touching, their eyes darting only when they think no one's watching. You aren't close enough to catch every word, but you hear enough to understand that something forbidden is being said. One of them clutches her pestimal a little too tightly. The other reaches out, touches her arm, reassures her with a softness that feels practiced. This is more than friendship. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's relief. You can't tell, and you know better than to stare. The hammam is full of little sanctuaries like this, pockets of safety carved out by proximity and privacy. It's no wonder women feel free enough here to confess, conspire, and sometimes commit to things they can't in daylight. Everything about the space encourages intimacy. The heat lowers your defences. The nudity, oddly, makes it easier to be emotionally vulnerable. And the ritualistic rhythm, scrub, rinse, breathe, lulls the mind into a kind of trance. It's in these quieter corners that affairs are hinted at, that plans are made, that betrayals are whispered before they become actions. Some women even meet here in secret, not just with friends, but with allies, rivals, former lovers. There are stories passed down like myths of clandestine arrangements born under the domes of hammams. A woman hiding a pregnancy, another revealing the true father of her child, one plotting her escape from a husband who's started drinking more than praying. Here's a historical fact to match that atmosphere. In many parts of the empire, hammams served as informal courts of public opinion. If a woman had a grievance against her husband, his family, or even her own, she might bring it to the hammam quietly through storytelling. If enough women heard it, believed it, and passed it on, the complaint gained power. And if that story reached the ears of someone important, an elder, a midwife, the wife of a judge, it could change things. Reputation was everything. And in the hammam, reputations could rise or crumble faster than soap bubbles. There's a fringe fact too, though harder to prove. Some researchers believe that the bathhouse also served as a safe meeting ground for women who loved women. Not always romantic, not always physical, but emotionally charged bonds formed here. In the quiet touches, the long looks, the shared confessions that couldn't exist outside these walls. While no official records say so directly, because of course they wouldn't, folk songs, poems, and private letters hint at it. A knowing smile, a soft brush of a hand, a poem left in a wrapped towel. Love in a time of surveillance finds strange and beautiful ways to survive. Of course, scholars still debate this fiercely. Some argue that romantic or sexual relationships between women were rare and never openly acknowledged in Ottoman society, especially in public spaces like the hammam. Others suggest that the very structure of female-only spaces allowed these connections to flourish quietly, and that what we label today as queer might have been expressed differently then, not less real, just harder to categorise. The argument doesn't have a clean answer. History rarely does. You lie back on the marble bench and close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep but to listen. Nearby, a woman murmurs something about a neighbour's sudden wealth. She had no dowry last spring, and now she's dripping in emeralds. Another says nothing, just hums in agreement. Someone giggles, someone else sighs. Steam curls around your ears, and you hear the clink of a bowl being set down, the soft slap of feet on wet stone. Everything echoes, everything lingers, and then there's the darker side. Secrets aren't always whispered here for comfort. Sometimes they're weapons. A well-placed rumour, spoken in just the right tone to just the right person, can do more damage than any public scandal. The hammam isn't immune to spite. Far from it. Rivalries among wives, among mothers-in-law, among neighbours, it all brews here, and because it's all veiled in propriety and perfumed in rosewater, no one can be blamed outright. You can't accuse someone of slandering you when all they said was, "I heard her husband works late again." The hammam is the ultimate plausible deniability chamber, but it's also where truth finds refuge, where women, silenced elsewhere, speak freely. You remember the two women from earlier, still huddled, still locked in their private orbit. You'll never know what passed between them, and that's the point. Some stories live only in the steam. Eventually, the moment breaks, someone laughs a bit too loud, snapping the tension. The telaks reappear with fresh towels. A few of the women in the corner stand up, nodding, adjusting their halves. The secrets are packed away again, folded into towels, tucked behind eyes. The bathhouse resumes its softer pace. But for a brief moment there you felt it, the pulse of something real and raw beneath all the scrubbing and ceremony. Not every mystery in the hammam gets solved. Some are meant to stay misted over, like shapes behind a fogged-up mirror, hinted at, never named. You're starting to think the telaks are part magician, part therapist, and part drill sergeant. They reappear whenever your limbs begin to feel too lazy, guiding you into yet another round of movement, this time to a smaller side room, more intimate, with a slightly lower ceiling and a faint smell of bay leaf and lemon and oil. Here the air is thicker still, the heat dry rather than steamy, and waiting in the centre of the room is something that looks deceptively harmless. A long, narrow marble slab with grooves on either side for draining water. You blink slowly. This is where the massage happens. You feel both excitement and fear. The woman who greets you, another telak but older, wiry, with calloused hands and sharp eyes, gestures for you to lie down. You obey, because really, there's no room for negotiation once she places a hand firmly on your shoulder. The moment your skin touches the marble, she pours warm oil down your spine. It slithers along your back like molten silk. And then, she starts. At first, it's heaven. The muscles in your shoulders give up without a fight. Your neck loosens as like a knot that's been soaking in rain, but then she digs deeper, and deeper still, until her fingers feel less like hands and more like ancient tools designed to chisel tension out of your body whether you like it or not. You wince. She smirks. She's seen worse. Ottoman massages weren't just indulgent. They were anatomical warfare. The telaks were trained not just in comfort but in technique, often passed down through generations. These weren't casual rub-downs. They involved pressure points, joint manipulation, stretches that would make a gymnast blink, and a firm belief that if you weren't slightly sore after, it didn't count. And it's not just your back. She works your legs, your arms, even your fingers, cracking and rotating them like puzzle pieces. And the final flourish? She flips you, not gently either. One swift motion and you're flat on your back, dazed, feeling like a loaf of bread halfway through baking. You glance up at the dome above, the way it blurs in the rising oil-scented heat, and wonder how many women before you have stared at those same glimmering mosaic tiles while getting their soul wrung out through their shoulder blades. Here's the kicker. These telaks often memorize their regular clients' needs. Who likes deep pressure? Who needed lighter touch? Who had knee pain or carried grief in their jaw? In elite hammams, the best telaks were almost like informal doctors. A noblewoman might confide in her favourite masseuse about more than just muscle tension, heartaches, suspicions, even private fears, because nothing makes you honest like being half naked, face down, and in the hands of someone who knows where all your pain hides. A quirky, somewhat forgotten detail. Some telaks were trained to use not just their hands, but their feet, elbows, and even knees during massage. It sounds dramatic, and it was. Imagine being straddled by a wiry woman in her 50s, her knee pressing into your glutes while she leans forward to grind the stress out of your upper back. No part of you is spared. Some historians believe certain movements were adapted from wrestling holds and even yoga-like postures introduced via Persian or Indian influence. The hammam, after all, was never culturally isolated. It was a sponge, absorbing whatever worked. And yet modern scholars still debate just how formalised these techniques were. Were they learned through apprenticeships? Did telaks train under a master like physicians did? Or were these practices more intuitive, passed through families without written documentation? There's little surviving record, mostly because these women weren't considered official medical practitioners. They were servants, often invisible in written history, unless they messed up or became part of palace gossip. Some argue this lack of record hides a rich oral tradition. Others say it's evidence of the practice's informality. But anyone who's ever had a real hammam massage knows there's nothing casual about it. Back on the slab, you're now limp. The final act of the massage involves a series of rhythmic slaps, not painful, just enough to wake your skin. It's oddly invigorating, like your body is being reminded it exists. Then, with one last dousing of water, she steps back, nods once, and disappears with the efficiency of a ghost. You lie there for a moment, dripping and stunned, before managing to stand. Your legs feel foreign. You're back. No idea what that's doing. You're somewhere between reborn and mildly concussed. The silence in this chamber is different. Less social, more contemplative. A few other women are being worked over in the same ritualistic fashion. No one talks here, not even whispers. Only the occasional groan, the splash of water, the sharp intake of breath when someone's shoulder gives up a knot it's been clinging to since childhood. It's less of a spa and more of a temple of recalibration. Wrapped in a fresh towel, you make your way back to the resting room, moving like a newborn foal. Every part of you is too soft and too alive at once. Your skin glows. Your hair sticks to your forehead, and you smell faintly of cinnamon and eucalyptus. A bowl of sherbet appears, cherry, icy and tart, and you drink it slowly, grateful for something cold in a world of heat. You sit quietly, no longer needing to observe or analyse. The politics, the power plays, the social dances, they all fade for now. You've been kneaded past language. What's left is a kind of stillness, the kind that comes after release. Women pass you, brushing their hair, sipping tea, talking softly. But you no longer feel like an outsider watching them. You're part of the flow now. The hammam has stripped you down, literally and metaphorically. And in doing so, it's offered you something you didn't know you needed. A deep, elemental reminder that your body is yours. Not for display, not for judgment, just yours. Bruised, butter, soft, clean, sore and sacred. At some point, while you're reclined in a quiet corner with your second bowl of sherbet half finished, and your towel slowly slipping from your shoulder, you begin to notice something strange. A silent show playing out across the room. It's subtle at first, a flick of fabric here, a rustle of silk there, but once your eyes adjust to the drama, it's impossible to unsee. And the costumes? They were not random, not at all. You've stumbled onto another language of the hammam, one stitched in cloth, threaded in colour, woven with status, symbolism and just a hint of seduction. What you wear or don't wear inside the bathhouse is a full-blown message board, and you're suddenly aware that your own pestimal, plain and practical, might as well have you labelled newcomer. It's fine, there are worse things to be, but the woman across from you, she's not here to be subtle. Her wrap is sheer enough to shimmer, knotted in a way that says she didn't just throw it on, she arranged it. You start to see it everywhere. Pestimals tied high to lengthen the torso, low to accentuate curves, crisscrossed like sashes to add flair. The hammam may be a place of physical cleansing, but it's also a runway, and these women are designers of their own image. Historically, the pestimal was made from hand-woven cotton or linen, often striped or edged with embroidery. It was lightweight, quick drying, and, let's be honest, convenient for conversations where you're simultaneously boiling, lounging, and occasionally lunging for your towel. But the deeper truth, these cloths were often coded. Bright colours meant youth, fertility, sometimes even flirtation. Pale colours suggested modesty or mourning. Thick wraps were more common among older women, or those signalling status through luxury fabric. And those delicate little ankle bracelets peeking out beneath the hem, not fashion statements, at least not only. They could indicate engagement, availability, or simply wealth. You could spend a lifetime learning the dialect of fabric in the hammam. One woman walks by now in a pale blue pestimal with gold thread running through the hem. She's not particularly young, but her posture, shoulders back, chin lifted, commands attention. She's not flaunting exactly, she's announcing. Women nod subtly as she passes, acknowledging something unspoken. Power, perhaps, or maybe she just has very good taste in linen. But either way, she walks like a woman who has influence and wants you to see it. You glance back at your own pestimal, humble and functional. And you realise, in this space, cloth speaks. It whispers stories about your family, your status, your marriage, your confidence. For a place where everyone is technically undressed, there's a surprising amount of costume involved. A quirky historical footnote here. In some cities, elite women owned multiple pestimals for different moods, events, even seasons. A woman might wear darker tones in winter, florals for pre-wedding ceremonies, or bold colours when she wanted to signal availability for matchmaking. Wealthy brides were often gifted elaborately embroidered pestimals with silk fringe stitched by hand over weeks or even months. And if you were really fancy, yours came with matching slippers, velvet ones, with pearls. And then there's the jewellery. Even in the bathhouse, women wore their status, sometimes literally. Gold bangles, delicate chains, toe rings, these weren't for vanity alone. Ottoman women used gold jewellery as both adornment and investment. It could be pawned in a crisis, or used as part of a dowry, or saved quietly for escape if things turned ugly at home. So when a woman walked into the hammam glinting like a chandelier, it wasn't just fashion, it was financial autonomy worn proudly and publicly. A glittering insurance policy wrapped around her wrist. Some scholars argue that hammam attire gave women a rare form of visual agency in a society that otherwise restricted female self-expression. In here, away from men's gazes and societal constraints, women could dress and undress with intentional flair. Others argue that the performance aspect of clothing in the hammam only reinforced class structures and competition. If your pestimal wasn't expensive or your jewellery was thin, your place in the pecking order was obvious. Liberation or reinforcement. The steam fogs the line, as usual. You catch a glimpse of a younger girl, maybe 16, fidgeting with her wrap as her aunt adjusts it more modestly. Her bare shoulder had slipped out too far. You realise this too is part of the education. The hammam is where girls learn how to present themselves, how to wrap themselves in the codes of womanhood. It's a silent curriculum. Posture, eye contact, modesty, allure. All these lessons passed down in water and whispers. One woman, older, but with a mischievous spark, sits with a group of friends, twirling a gold earring between her fingers. Her pestimal is dotted with delicate rose motifs. She spots you watching and gives you a look that's half challenge, half approval. You're being read, appraised, not in a cruel way, more like a social card game, and you've just been dealt in. A new group enters the room now, and you notice how quickly the others take stock. The glances are quick but loaded. These women are from a different neighbourhood. You can tell by their accents, their brighter pestimals, the louder tone of their chatter. Within seconds, the room has recalibrated itself, like a pond rippling from a tossed stone. New styles, new gossip, new hierarchies to navigate. And still, through all this fashion and flair, there's that unshakable paradox. In a place where everyone is undressed, nothing is left unspoken. You're beginning to understand that the hammam isn't about modesty or exposure. It's about mastery, of fabric, of self-presentation, of the subtle art of being seen exactly as you wish to be, while revealing nothing more than you choose. You shift your pestimal slightly, smoothing it with deliberate fingers. It's not fancy, but the way you wear it, that's the story. That's the signal. And just like that, you've joined the conversation. No words needed. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, like steam curling up a wall, subtle, creeping, and entirely intentional. The chatter around you lowers, not in hush, but in respect, as a small group of women enters the harem through a side corridor. They aren't dressed extravagantly. They don't need to be. Their confidence announces them louder than gold ever could. They move with practiced ease, not seeking attention, but drawing it all the same. You recognize it immediately. These aren't regular visitors. These are powerful women. You've just witnessed the arrival of the elite, and one of them isn't just powerful, she's legendary. At the center is a woman wrapped in layers of pale silk, pestamel so fine it clings like mist. Her hair, streaked silver, is piled atop her head and adorned with a single emerald pin. She doesn't speak, she doesn't have to. She's surrounded by the three younger women, likely attendants or companions, but clearly trained in the art of making themselves small in her presence. Someone whispers her name, Hatis Hanum. You've heard it before. Everyone has. She's the widow of a pasha, the sister of a vizier, and the quiet shadow behind at least 2 arranged marriages and 1 mysteriously vanished rival. This is her domain. The hammam has always been a refuge for women, but for the elite of the Ottoman Empire, particularly women from the imperial harem or high-ranking households, it was also a kingdom, one made of steam, marble and meticulous control. And while most women used the bathhouse to unwind or socialise, women like Hatit Hanum used it to govern. You watch as she settles onto the central stone, her attendants kneeling around her, scrubbing her arms, offering her sweet drinks, massaging her temples. It's not indulgence, it's ritual, it's power maintenance. Historically, women from the Ottoman elite often had their own private hammams, attached to their mansions or palatial quarters, designed with stunning opulence. We're talking gilded fountains, coloured tiles imported from Iznik, domes with custom glasswork that filtered sunlight into kaleidoscopic splashes. Some even had heated floors throughout, with underfloor water channels and pipes that allowed for perfect steam levels at all times. This wasn't just hygiene, this was architectural flexing. The bathhouse was the physical extension of a woman's influence, and she let it be known. But they didn't always bathe alone. Elite women often invited others into their hammams, relatives, allies, potential daughters-in-law. But make no mistake, these weren't casual get-togethers. They were auditions. Every word spoken was weighed, every reaction measured. Were you clever enough to catch the subtext? Were your compliments sincere, your posture graceful, your pestamel properly tied? Because one wrong word and you might find your marriage prospects, your social standing, or even your family's reputation quietly evaporating like so much steam. You notice it happening now. A young woman kneels at Hatit Hanum's side, murmuring something. The matriarch listens, sips her sherbet, then raises an eyebrow. Not disapproval, but not delight either. The girl adjusts her wrap and tries again. This is hammam diplomacy, and it's brutal in its softness. A historical fact. Within the imperial palace itself, the Valid Sultan, the Sultan's mother, often had her own lavish hammam where she held informal meetings with other powerful women. These weren't just relaxing afternoons, they were power summits. The hierarchy of the harem was fierce, and alliances were often brokered between sudsy back scrubs and perfumed massages. Some of the most influential women in Ottoman history, like Kusum Sultan or Hurrem Sultan, were rumoured to have used hammam gatherings as political leverage. What was said in the hammam could tilt the balance of court politics. There's a fringe detail you wouldn't expect. Some elite women commissioned travelling hammam tents for journeys, ornate portable structures with canvas walls, copper basins, and even heated stones that could be set up mid-caravan. Imagine crossing Anatolia with your own mobile spa, complete with attendants. Why? Because once you've tasted power wrapped in rosewater and jasmine, you don't give it up just because you're on the road. You're pulled back to the present as Hatis Hanum rises, slowly but with intent. Everyone nearby instinctively adjusts their posture, some standing, some kneeling a little lower. She makes her way to a more private corner, where her telak begins the oiling and massage ritual. You catch glimpses, her hand adorned with a single emerald ring. Her shoulders relax but alert. This is the power of a woman who has survived the game and now writes her own rules. It's a strange reversal. Outside the hammam, these women are often behind veils and closed carriage curtains, their lives managed by men or confined to palaces. But here, they walk freely, speak plainly, and orchestrate influence with just a glance. The hammam is more than a sanctuary. It's a stage, a boardroom, a court, and a confessional all rolled into one. Of course, not everyone agrees on just how much power these women wielded. Some historians argue that their influence, while real, was confined and performative, power that only existed because men allowed it, and that could vanish with a husband's death or a sultan's whim. Others believe these women worked within their constraints with surgical precision, mastering the art of subtle manipulation, creating networks of loyalty and fear from behind layers of silk and steam. As Hatice Hanım is dried by her attendants, the temperature in the room seems to drop. Not literally. If anything, the steam thickens, but emotionally. The audience watches with fascination and just a hint of fear. This isn't envy. It's recognition. You don't get to that level without playing hard and sometimes dirty. She catches your gaze just briefly, not long enough to mean anything, but long enough to make you sit a little straighter. Then, like the tide pulling back from the shore, she gathers her things, her attendants wrapping her in fine linen and scented scarves. She leaves as she came, quietly, gracefully, absolutely. No fanfare, just the faintest trail of citrus and oud in her wake, and the hammam breathes again. You're drying off in the cooler chamber when the soft slap of sandals on wet stone alerts you to something new. Not more noble women, not another bridal party, but a different presence altogether. A pair of tall, silent figures glide past the entrance. Their robes are black, their heads shaved, their posture ramrod straight. They don't speak, and yet the room shifts around them, subtly recalibrating. Every woman stiffens, just slightly. You've just had your first glimpse of the eunuchs. They are the only males allowed within the sacred space of the female hammam, and even then, only in specific roles, at certain times, and under very particular circumstances. Their presence is tolerated, not welcomed, not feared, but watched, always watched. One of them stands near the outer chamber, eyes lowered, arms folded inside his sleeves. The other disappears through a side passage, likely into a service corridor to check supplies or deliver a message. They move like shadows trained not to disturb the mist. Their presence is a reminder. As much as the hammam feels like a sealed world of feminine power and freedom, the walls are not entirely without cracks. Surveillance, soft, violent but ever present, lingers in the marble. Historically, eunuchs occupied a strange and often uncomfortable role in Ottoman society. Castrated young, often enslaved many were trained for service in the imperial palace or the homes of the elite. Their in-between status, biologically male but stripped of reproductive ability, made them acceptable intermediaries between men and women in spaces where gender segregation was strictly enforced. They were trusted to carry messages, escort royal women, manage harems, and yes, oversee aspects of bathhouse operation. But it wasn't trust born from respect, it was trust born from perceived harmlessness. A eunuch was considered safe precisely because he had been made less, and yet over time some of them gained tremendous power. The most influential eunuchs, particularly the chief black eunuch of the palace, held sway over imperial communications, the sultan's harem, and even foreign diplomacy. They lived in marble halls, they commanded servants, they could make or break careers. But in the hammam, their power is more ambiguous. The eunuchs who serve here aren't elite. They're employees, caretakers, guards of propriety. Some historians suggest their job was to ensure no male outsiders slipped in, to monitor the movement of concubines and noblewomen, and to make sure the bathhouse didn't become a site of too much unregulated freedom. After all, when you put 100 women in one steamy room and let them talk freely, things could get revolutionary. There's a quiet debate among scholars about how women felt about their presence. Some argue that eunuchs were invisible to them, background fixtures like stone fountains and towel baskets. Others suggest their presence was always a faint pressure on the room, a reminder that even in this supposed sanctuary, male authority lingered, in altered form. The quirky detail? In some bathhouses, particularly those attached to the palace or wealthy households, eunuchs weren't just guards, they were timekeepers, not metaphorically, literally. Their job was to ensure women didn't spend too long in one phase of the bathing ritual. If a woman lingered too long in the massage room, or if a bridal celebration got too raucous, the eunuch would send a signal, a knock, a bell, or a whispered message to a telak. Imagine someone watching the flow of your self-care like a strict librarian monitoring noise levels. You glance over at the figure still standing near the edge of the chamber. His face is blank, unreadable, and directed just slightly away from the activity. Not respectful, not disinterested. Just fixed. You wonder what he sees, what he thinks, what he hears in all these half-covered conversations and trailing laughter. Or maybe he's trained not to hear anything at all. Still, you can't help but feel the subtle tightening of the space. Women who were lounging a moment ago are now adjusting their pestimals, voices lower. The invisible curtain of freedom slips just a bit to the side. Even the telaks move with a slightly brisker pace, aware that the spell of female privacy has been interrupted, however faintly. And yet there's power in the awareness. These women know how to read a room. They've lived entire lives in environments where watching and being watched is part of the architecture. One woman, older, with skin like polished walnut and silver rings on every finger, meets the eunuch's gaze directly. Just for a second, not defiantly, just neutrally, as if to say, "We see you. We've always seen you. And we're still not afraid." You wonder about the eunuchs themselves, how they saw the hammam. Did they feel like jailers or guests? Intruders or protectors? Were they haunted by the scent of roses and eucalyptus? Or did it become just another part of the job? Did they ever envy the laughter echoing through the walls, laughter they were never invited to join? There's an emotional ambiguity here that resists tidy answers. The hammam is a space of freedom, but also a space of surveillance. The eunuchs are symbols of limitation, but also survivors of a brutal system. Everything in this empire, even in its quietest corners, exists in layers. Eventually, the eunuch near the entrance moves back toward the side corridor and disappears, robes trailing behind him like smoke. The shift in the room is immediate. Shoulders relax, a few women exhale audibly. One makes a joke about being on her best behaviour, and laughter ripples through the group like relief. The hammam breathes again, full and soft, but the moment lingers. You've now seen the line between freedom and performance, and how fine it is. The women return to their conversations, their rituals, their rhythms. But something in the air has changed, like a breeze that briefly turned too cold. You wrap your pestimal tighter and lean back against the tile, eyes tracing the patterns of the dome above. For all its secrets and softness, the hammam is still part of the empire, and empires, as you're learning, have long arms, even inside their warmest rooms. Later, as the scent of steam-brewed rosewater still clings to your skin and the air shifts into something more meditative, you find yourself drawn back into the harem for another round, not of gossip or games, but something deeper. This time you're led to a quieter corner, where a woman waits beside a small table filled with objects that look like they belong in an apothecary or an ancient magician's kit. Small glass bottles filled with oils in every hue, bundles of dried herbs tied in twine, tiny ceramic bowls with crushed powders in soft greens, reds, even purple. You don't know what half of it is, but you recognise the scent. Clove, camphor, basil, cinnamon, lemon peel. It smells like memory and medicine mixed together. This isn't just a bath anymore. This is healing. The woman nods to you as you approach. She's not a telak. Her hands are finer, more precise. She wears a plain pestimal, nothing flashy, but her presence has weight. She's the hammam's herbalist, or maybe healer, depending on who you ask. You sit before her, and she begins mixing a paste in a small bowl there, adding oil drop by drop until it turns glossy. She tells you it's for joint pain. You don't have joint pain, but you nod anyway. This is the kind of experience you don't turn down. Historically, hammams weren't just about socializing, or even religious cleanliness. They were medical spaces, of a sort. The Ottoman medical system, heavily influenced by Greek, Roman, Persian and Arabic traditions, believed deeply in the balance of the body's four humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile. Health was a matter of balance, and heat, moisture and massage, essential tools for restoring that equilibrium. The hammam, with its regulated temperatures and flowing water, became a kind of open-air clinic for everyday ailments. You lean forward as the healer begins applying the paste to your knees and ankles, massaging it in with slow, practiced motions. The sensation is warm, grainy, and oddly comforting. She hums under her breath, not a melody exactly, more like a ritual rhythm. Around you, other women are also receiving treatments. A face mask made of yogurt and honey, hair being washed in a mixture of olive oil and crushed figs, a steam tent covering a woman from shoulders down, herbs hanging inside it like incense. This is a world of its own, tucked inside a world you thought you already understood. One woman nearby is being wrapped in linen strips soaked in something pungent. Vinegar and lavender, maybe. Another is having her feet soaked in a copper basin, with slices of orange floating in the water. A telak moves between them, checking pulses with 3 fingers on the wrist, murmuring things like dry constitution and cold stomach. You hear mention of wind in the bones, of spleens running too hot, of blood that climbs in the morning. It all sounds poetic and mysterious, but everyone here takes it very seriously. A fringe historical fact, some hammams even kept full-time bath physicians, or at least attendants trained in the humoral method. These weren't licensed doctors in the modern sense, but women skilled in diagnosing common ailments by touch, smell and observation. They'd recommend not only herbs and treatments, but also lifestyle changes. Drink more pomegranate juice, eat less lamb, avoid sour cherries, sleep facing east. Their knowledge was a blend of science, folk wisdom, and instinct passed down through generations. And women trusted them. Not because they had degrees or titles, but because they listened. Because they'd watched hundreds, even thousands of women pass through their hands. Old, young, pregnant, grieving, newly married, recently widowed. A healer in a hammam didn't need to ask many questions. She could see it in your skin, your eyes, the way you walked or flinched when touched. This was medicine with intuition. Some scholars argue that this female-led approach to healing was its own kind of resistance, a quiet challenge to the male-dominated world of formal Ottoman medicine, where doctors were usually men and patients often expected to travel to them, not the other way around. In the hammam it was reversed. The healer came to you, in steam, in oil, in care. Others suggest these women, while skilled, were still seen as lesser, relegated to women's bald knowledge, the kind of treatment respected only until something went wrong. If a woman recovered, the healer was praised. If she didn't, the blame came swift and hard. Still, it didn't stop women from seeking them out, especially when male doctors refused to see female patients unless they were fully veiled or represented by a male relative. The healer now wraps your legs in warm cloth, murmuring that the paste needs time to settle. You sit, breathing in the mingled scent of herbs and sweat, and feel a surprising sense of stillness. It's not just the treatment, it's the attention. In this space, someone sees you not as decoration or duty, but as a body with needs, aches, and stories written in muscle and skin. Around you, women share remedies in low tones. How to reduce swelling during pregnancy, what to drink during long fasts, how to relieve the sting of heartbreak. One older woman swears by rose petal vinegar. Another claims bathing under a full moon cures melancholy. There's no smugness, no pretense, just a deep shared knowledge, a library of living memory passed from hand to hand. When the cloths are unwrapped and the healer checks your legs, she nods approvingly. You feel lighter somehow, not cured, not transformed, but acknowledged. That might be the most healing part of all. She moves on to the next woman without fanfare, already mixing another paste, already slipping into another roll. You rise slowly, your skin tingling and soft, your body still humming from her touch. And as you leave the little herbal corner of the hammam, you carry with you more than just scent and softness. You carry a sense of being witnessed, tended to, known. It starts as a subtle shift in the air. The steam is still thick, the marble still warm beneath your bare feet. But something's different now. You can smell it before you even see the source, a soft, heady cloud of perfume winding its way through the hammam like silk through fingers. It's not just one scent, it's layers. Rose, sandalwood, musk, citrus, and something sharp and spicy that catches at the back of your throat before melting into sweetness. You inhale without meaning to, and suddenly your surroundings feel richer, dreamier, as if you've stepped into another realm within the already otherworldly hammam. You've arrived at the perfuming ritual. The hammam has always been an olfactory experience, yes? But now, in this phase of the bathing cycle, scent becomes the centerpiece. The air isn't just fragrant, it's intentional. Women begin to unwrap their pestimals, laying them out to dry as attendants pass through the room with trays of oils, jars of ointments, and tiny glass bottles filled with elixirs too beautiful to drink but far too intoxicating to ignore. One woman dabs amber resin behind her ears, another dips her fingers into jasmine oil and runs it through her hair. A third unscrews a vial of something golden and spicy, then offers it to her friend with a sly conspiratorial smile. This isn't just pampering, it's communication. Historically, scent played a powerful role in Ottoman culture, not merely as a cosmetic tool but as a language in its own right. Women created signature fragrance blends tailored to their moods, marital status, or intentions. Want to signal flirtation? Try orange blossom with a touch of musk. Morning, something bitter, like black seed oils and marjoram. Hoping to stand out at a gathering? Clove, cinnamon, and crushed rose petals. And if you were trying to show wealth without saying a word? Oud. Always oud. Dark, smoky, expensive, and unforgettable. A quirkier layer to this fragrant history, women often used scent to send messages when words weren't safe or possible. Perfume letters were a thing, small notes brushed with a particular oil, folded into cloth and passed between hammam towels or tucked into the folds of garments. Sometimes they were declarations of love, other times warnings. One woman might send a sachet of lavender to an thieu, not just to say I admire you, but you should know who's talking behind your back. The hammam wasn't just a place to exchange gossip, it was a scent-coded messaging system, with far more nuance than language ever allowed. You settle onto a bench near a low marble basin, and a telak approaches with a small bottle in one hand and a silk fan in the other. She dabs a few drops of rose and myrrh onto your collarbones and then fans gently, wafting the scent upward. The heat intensifies the aroma, turning your skin into a slow-burning incense. It's oddly intimate. This woman who doesn't know your name treating your body like something sacred, worthy of attention and softness and ceremony. One woman nearby lies on her back while another oils her arms with mimosa-scented almond oil, humming something low and rhythmic. Across the chamber, a group of women are blending their own concoction, grinding herbs and petals into pastes, laughing over whether someone added too much patchouli. There's joy in this. Not performative beauty, not vanity, something closer to play, to ownership. Scent here isn't about attracting men, it's about defining your own presence. There's a scholarly debate tucked inside all this perfumed luxury. Some researchers argue that the emphasis on fragrance in the hammam was another form of gendered social control, a way of encouraging women to focus onto appearance, on masking bodily reality with sweetness and spice. Others insist it was an assertion of identity, a deliberate reclaiming of the senses in a world that often numbed or ignored them. After all, when women aren't allowed to speak loudly or move freely in public, why wouldn't they learn to make themselves known through scent? Another lesser-known fact. Ottoman women were not just users of perfume, they were creators. Recipes were passed down like family heirlooms, with mothers teaching daughters how to distill rosewater, how to extract oils from orange peel, how to steep herbs for days in ceramic jars under the sun. Some women became famous for their blends, sought after by palace officials or wealthy merchants' wives. In a world where female enterprise was limited, perfumery offered a rare form of recognised expertise. You lean forward as the telak uncorks another bottle and lets you inhale. Sandalwood and fig leaf, heavy and green. It smells like twilight, like the space between knowing and forgetting. You ask for a drop, and she nods, rubbing it gently into your wrists. The scent lingers long after her hands move on, wrapping around you like memory. Nearby, someone crushes dried rosebuds into powder and mixes it with milk to make a body mask. Another woman adds a few drops of violet oil to her hair and pins it up with delicate ivory combs. These aren't modern-day spa treatments designed for social media and skincare routines. This is ancestral. Women here aren't trying to be new, they're trying to be true, to themselves, to their mothers, to the legacy of being seen, smelled, and remembered. Someone hands you a small cloth pouch filled with dried jasmine and lemon verbena. A favour, a gesture. You tuck it into the fold of your pestamal. It smells like late summer and promises. You don't know who gave it to you, but you nod your thanks anyway. In the hammam, some things are exchanged without names, just intention. As the air thickens with fragrance and heat, a dreamy sadness falls over the room. Women lie back, eyes closed, skin glowing, surrounded by scent and steam. Time loses shape again. This isn't about looking beautiful. It's about being beautiful, on your own terms, in your own aroma, by your own rituals. You close your eyes and breathe in, letting your chest rise slowly, the perfume clinging to your skin like a second self. In the hammam, you are whoever you choose to be, and tonight you choose to be unforgettable. As the perfumed air begins to settle, and the heat lulls the hammam into a quieter, more fluid rhythm, a new kind of energy emerges, Not sharp, not loud, but playful and unguarded, like a stream breaking free of a dam. It's subtle at first, a giggle, echoing off tile, the distant splash of water that's far too forceful to be part of a serious scrub. Then you hear it again, laughter, fuller this time, rising over the murmurs. It rolls through the chamber like a breeze, and suddenly, the hammam doesn't feel like a spa or a shrine or a political chessboard. It feels like a party, and that's exactly what it is. This is what happens when the men are gone, and there's no mother-in-law breathing down your neck and no ceremonial roles to play. When no one is watching, no eunuchs, no daughters, no rivals, women let go. The rules don't vanish entirely, of course, they just loosen, unravel, and what's left is a space filled with dancing bodies, mischievous laughter, and the kind of joy that only flourishes when you stop performing and start living. You see it in motion now, a spontaneous splash war erupting in one of the side chambers. Two women in their 30s dart behind a marble bench, dripping and shrieking as a third pelts them with handfuls of suds. They are laughing so hard they can barely stand. Another group has formed a circle, clapping and singing a folk song in sync, the rhythm bouncing off the dome. You don't know the lyrics, but you know the feeling, camaraderie, silliness, freedom. Historically, these moments weren't unusual. In fact, the hammam was often the only place where women could act out, fully, without risking reputation or consequence. Behind these walls, you could be silly, loud, sensual. You could dance like no one was watching, because no one that mattered was. No fathers, no imams, no husbands, just women in all stages of life, cutting loose in the safest space they had. You're drawn into the circle, pulled by a woman with damp curls and a conspiratorial wink. She claps your hands to the beat, spins you twice, and then grins as you stumble back, dizzy from movement and laughter. You're smiling so hard your cheeks ache. You forgot your skin was still slick with oil. You forgot your hair is plastered to your forehead. None of it matters. Another woman, older, with laugh lines carved deep into her face, begins singing a bawdy song, something about a baker, a barrel of grapes, and a very suggestive rolling pin. You catch only half of it before the room erupts. Women double over. Someone mimics the rolling pin line with her hips. You can't help but laugh, half in shock, half in awe. This is a far cry from the reverent, ritualistic side of the hammam you've seen before. And yet it's not a contradiction. It's a continuation. The hammam has always been a layered space. It holds grief and joy, reverence and rebellion, side by side. It's not about choosing one version of womanhood over another. It's about having the space to embody all of them. Even the unfiltered, slightly chaotic, wildly alive ones. There's a quirky historical account from a 17th century traveller who visited Istanbul and somehow managed to glimpse, or more likely imagine, one of these moments. His writing describes the women as dancing like spirits, bare-armed and oiled, singing songs too scandalous to repeat. He goes on to speculate about rituals and orgies, his tone veering from voyeuristic fascination to confused horror. It's a wildly inaccurate and frankly hilarious portrayal, but it does hint at something true. When women are free, men get nervous. Even Ottoman authorities occasionally tried to rein in these hammam antics. Some edicts were issued discouraging loud gatherings, excessive music, or what officials vaguely referred to as inappropriate conduct. Naturally, none of it stuck. The hammam was too sacred, too necessary, too female to be easily policed. Women kept singing, kept dancing, kept throwing water at each other with wicked grins. There's a scholarly debate still ongoing about whether these outbursts were acts of resistance or simply a release valve for an otherwise repressive system. Was this joy revolutionary? Or was it allowed as a kind of pressure management? A space to vent, so that control could be maintained outside the walls? As usual, the answer's murky. Maybe it's both. You watch now as two younger women begin to dance. Not the structured, graceful movements you might expect, but something closer to a tease. One flips her pestamel and twirls, letting the fabric whip like a ribbon. The other follows, exaggeratedly swaying her hips. They're laughing, yes, but they're also watching. This is play, but it's also performance. The line between sisterhood and flirtation gets blurry here, softened by the fog, and women avert their eyes, others lean in. You're struck by how many apprehensions fill this room: comfort, curiosity, mild discomfort, amused encouragement. No one interferes. No one dictates the rules. The hammam holds them all. Every reaction, every mood, like water poured into differently shaped basins. There's power in this moment. not just in the movement, but in the permission it grants. Permission to exist outside of roles, to laugh loudly, move your body, flirt, sing dirty songs, splash your friend in the face and roll your eyes at the whole institution of womanhood without abandoning it. A woman in her 70s claps her hands once, sharply. The music pauses. She begins a song of her own, older than anyone in the room, her voice rough but commanding. The room falls quiet at first, then joins in, voices layering like steam across stone. It's a lullaby, a folk song from the interior provinces, about love lost in war, or maybe just time. The mood shifts again, not heavy, but soft. You can see tears in one woman's eyes. Another reaches for her friend's hand, and then, just as quickly, the moment passes. Someone makes a joke, another splash. The energy lifts again, as easily as a cloth pulled from warm water. You lean back against the wall, pestomel damp and crooked, hair wild, cheeks flushed. You've never felt more real, more human. The hammam hasn't just scrubbed your skin, it's released something deeper, a version of you that laughs louder, breathes fuller and doesn't apologise for it. In here, with the men gone and the masks off, you're not confined to one type of woman, you're every kind at once. The laughter still lingers in the air, floating lazily over the steam like a ribbon caught in the breeze, when the atmosphere begins to subtly shift again. The younger women recede, pulled back into towels and soft conversations. The music quiets. Someone snuffs out a cluster of candles in the corner alcove, and suddenly the hammam feels less like a playground and more like a stage waiting for a performance no one announces but everyone anticipates. This is the part of the visit that requires no schedule and no invitation. The inspection is about to begin. You first notice it in the glance of an older woman seated across the room, eyes narrowed not in judgment, but analysis. She's watching a girl, 16, maybe 17, who stands with her mother near the fountain. The girl's pestomel slips slightly as she bends to rinse her hands, revealing a glimpse of long, lean limbs and soft, unmarked skin. Her mother fixes the wrap quickly, but the woman watching has already catalogued everything she needs. The girl is being evaluated, quietly, completely. You're witnessing a silent tradition known as the bride test, and in the hammam, it's been going on for centuries. This ritual, unofficial yet widespread, is exactly what it sounds like. Prospective mother-in-law, or several, visits the hammam not to cleanse or socialise, but to assess. She comes to observe the physicality of a young woman her son might marry. Is her hair thick and healthy? Are her legs strong? Her posture upright? Her skin smooth? Are her manners refined even when half naked and flushed from steam? These aren't idle questions. In a society where arranged marriages were common and modesty veiled most opportunities for real observation, the hammam provided the only chance for a full, unfiltered glimpse. No one talks about it openly. No one has to. Every woman in the room knows what's happening, and the girl knows too. You can see it in the way she suddenly straightens her back, tucks her hair behind her ear with studied care, glances toward the inspecting woman without making it look too obvious. Her mother says something light-hearted, probably urging her to relax, but her eyes flick to the observer and then away again. The tension is quiet but unmistakable. This is a test, and she cannot fail. A historical fact you might not expect. In many Ottoman communities, the hammam served as the unofficial arena of matchmaking. While marriage contracts and dowries were hammered out by fathers and male relatives, the preliminary vetting of brides often began in the women's bathhouse. A favourable impression in the hammam could open doors. A poorly tied pestomel or a rude comment to an attendant, that could shut them just as quickly. Some young women were even coached for these moments, how to stand, how to laugh gently, how to appear humble but not awkward. It was like charm school, but with steam sweat and an audience of aunties. There's a quirky twist to this tradition. In some cases, women known for their discerning eye were invited to the hammam by families hoping to arrange a match. These matchmaking scouts weren't just mothers, they were professional observers, well versed in reading body language and assessing family reputation. Think of them as the original LinkedIn recruiters, but with towels and sweet sherbet. One nod from them could spark negotiations, one whispered critique could end them before they started. And yet, as with most things in the hammam, there's debate about the ethics of this practice. Some historians view it as empowering, that within the domestic cloistered world of Ottoman women, these rituals gave them agency a role in shaping their families' alliances. Others argue it reduced girls to livestock-style inspections, perpetuating objectification in an otherwise female-dominated space. Truth is likely both, a complicated tradition where care, control, pride and pressure swirl together like soap bubbles. You watch now as another woman enters, a widow judging by her darker pestimal and the soft grey strands that escape her bun. She glances at the same girl, then at her mother, and gives a polite nod. The mother smiles tightly. It's the social version of poker. Gestures mean everything. A nod is interest, a smile is approval, and silence, well, that says more than words. The older woman gestures to a nearby attendant and leans in to whisper. The girl straightens again, subtly lifting her chin this time. She's seen this game before. Maybe she's even been the target of it once or twice, but today the stakes feel higher. She smiles, not too wide, and bends to rinse her hands again, this time more gracefully. It's rehearsed but effective. You catch yourself holding your breath, and then you laugh softly to yourself. You're invested. Another young woman enters the chamber, and the air shifts again. She's less polished, her pestimals loosely knotted, her hair damp and frizzed around her face. She's here with a group of cousins, boisterous and unaware of the silent drama unfolding in the corner. But the matchmaker notices her too. She watches as the Gamir laughs, tosses her hair, stands unself-consciously under the arch of the fountain's steam. You see the assessing glance, the mental note, the quiet comparison. The politics of the hammam don't stop with the upper class. In towns and cities, women of all backgrounds participated in this delicate dance. A match didn't need to be imperial to matter. It only had to secure comfort, reputation, and ideally, affection. In the absence of public dating or private encounters, this room of warmth and water became the crucible where future unions were sparked. It's not without its weight. You can see it in the way the young girls move differently when they know they're being watched. You remember that pressure of being judged on posture, on how softly you speak, how gracefully you rinse your feet. But you also see resilience. A woman who knows she's being evaluated also knows she holds power. She's not only on display, she's choosing how to display herself. As the mother and daughter leave, the matron follows at a respectable distance. Nothing dramatic. No deal sealed, but the glance shared between the two older women is promising. And the girl, she walks a little taller on her way out. The bathhouse exhales again, steam curling up around your shoulders. The ritual has passed unnoticed by most, unforgettable to a few. Because here in the hammam, even a quiet inspection can ripple through generations. There's something eerie and beautiful about the quiet that follows a matchmaking moment in the hammam. It's not silence exactly. Water still flows, voices still murmur, the clink of copper bowls still punctuates the air, but it's as if the space itself takes a moment to absorb what just passed. You lean back, pestimal drying in soft wrinkles against your skin, and begin to notice another dynamic playing out. It's less obvious than courtship, less flashy than dancing. But it's just as intimate and in its own way even more powerful. Women watching women, not in the calculated glances of matchmakers or the playful eyeing of flirtation, but in the raw, unfiltered gaze of curiosity, judgment, admiration, and everything in between. And what they're watching, what you suddenly realise you've been watching too, is bodies. Not fashion, not hairstyles. Bodies. In the hammam, there's no hiding from your reflection, because everyone around you is your mirror. You see it all, stretch marks across hips like fine embroidery, bellies soft from motherhood, knees that creak, breasts that don't sit like poetry but more like truth, skin that has known sunlight, labour, lovers, loss, no filters, no corsets, no illusion, just flesh, warm, present, human, and yet, even here, in a space built by and for women, the old stories follow. You catch a young woman pulling her pestimal higher every few minutes, covering a stomach that only she seems to mind. Another adjusts hers to shield the slight gap between her thighs, even as others lounge with their legs fully stretched, toes pointed toward the domed ceiling like they're airing out secrets. The unspoken judgments ripple through the space like subtle shifts in steam. A quick glance at someone's ankles, a frown at a visible scar, a raised eyebrow when someone, blessed with enviably high cheekbones and unreasonably perfect skin, walks past without a towel. There's no ope cruelty, this isn't a locker room comedy, but there is awareness. a constant mutual measurement. In Ottoman society, where a woman's body was so often veiled, literally and figuratively, the hammam was one of the only spaces where bodies were exposed without shame, or sometimes especially with shame. There's a long-standing belief that hammams were liberating for women, and in many ways they were, but they also became places where beauty standards took on ritualistic weight. Your skin tone, your curves or lack thereof, your posture, your gait, each detail was read like a scroll. Historical fact that might surprise you: there were idealized female body types in the empire, often codified in poetry, paintings, and even matchmaking gossip. Rounded hips, soft bellies, fair or olive skin depending on region, strong thighs, delicate ankles, dark, thick hair. And in the hammam, those ideals were held against reality, moment by moment. It wasn't that every woman had to meet them, but every woman knew them. They were in the air like perfume, one afoot of the more fringe details. In some regions, hammam telaks, those same attendants who scrubbed and massaged, were known to offer quiet commentary. Not always kind. A telak might tell a woman she's too thin to carry a child, that her skin needs brightening, or that her back curves too much. All under the guise of health advice, of course. These weren't insults. They were suggestions. Suggestions that somehow always aligned with societal ideals. You'd be surprised how many women walked out of the hammam not only glowing but questioning, carrying compliments in one hand and quiet shame in the other. Still, not every gaze is critical. You watch now as a young girl walks nervously through the chamber, clearly new to the experience. Her pestimel is clumsily wrapped, her skin blotchy with heat. She glances at every woman she passes, unsure where to land her gaze. She crosses her arms, then uncrosses them, then tugs at the edge of her towel. An older woman nearby, sharp eyes, wiry grey hair twisted into a no-nonsense bun, catches her discomfort. And instead of looking away, she smiles, warm, steady. A look that says, "You're fine. You're safe." The girl exhales. Her shoulders draw. It's the smallest shift, but you see it, and so does everyone else. There's a kind of quiet mentorship in the hammam, not the formal kind, but the ancient one, the way older women model comfort in their skin without teaching a single lesson. You see one woman oiling her feet slowly, methodically, humming as she works. Another lies on her back with her pestimel flung open, arms above her head like she's bathing in moonlight. They aren't trying to be beautiful, and maybe because of that they are. You begin to think that the hammam doesn't create beauty, it reveals comfort, which might be even better. And still, the internal dialogue never really stops. You shift your own pestimel slightly, not for modesty, not for vanity, just awareness. Because you too have a body in this room, one that's been seen, measured, perhaps judged, perhaps admired. You don't know, and maybe that's okay. There's a scholarly debate tucked into all of this, whether the hammam freed women from beauty pressures or amplified them. Was the exposure of the body liberating because it normalized imperfection? Or was it another venue where beauty hierarchies played out, enforced by tradition, instead of mirrors? Some argue the hammam was a radical space of body acceptance long before modern self-love slogans ever existed. Others point to the pressure young brides faced, the way girls were whispered about for being too dark, too big, too thin. But here's what you know. In the hammam, your body is part of the chorus. Whether you hide it, flaunt it, celebrate or critique it, it becomes part of the living, breathing song of the space. No one walks out unchanged, not because of what they saw, but because of what they felt. You look around one last time before heading to the cooling room. Women of every age stretch, wash, oil and rest. Not one of them looks the same, and in that kaleidoscope of curves, scars and stories, something inside you releases. You are not a comparison, you're a composition. The cool chamber welcomes you like a sigh, less humid, less scented, less loud. You settle onto a cushion near the fountain, the marble now dry and smooth beneath your thighs. The contrast between this soft quiet and the lively rhythm of the hot rooms is stark. Here, conversations shift from laughter and teasing to something slower, lower. Stories begin to slip out, not shouted or announced, but exhaled. You don't even realise what you're eavesdropping on until the word palace slides across the stone like a whisper. 3 women sit close together, faces angled inward, eyes darting towards the entrance every so often, just in case. One of them wears a wrap finer than the others, silk with an embroidered edge. Her voice is careful, but you recognise the cadence of someone telling a story she knows isn't hers to share, but will anyway. The tale? A warning or a confession, or maybe both. It begins with a name, a woman from the imperial harem, a favourite. And what sounds like a betrayal, slow, deliberate, and served with honeyed tea. You lean slightly, not enough to intrude, but enough to hear. The woman in silk talks about a bathhouse within the Topkapi Palace itself, hidden beneath layers of gates and guards. She describes another woman, ambitious, beautiful, and clever, who used the hammam not to relax, but to hunt. Not for lovers, but for power. She'd wait until the other women were distracted, until their bodies were soft and their minds unguarded, then slide in with gentle questions, a compliment, a rumour, and just like that she'd know everything. Who envied whom? Who was falling out of favour? Who was pregnant? Who might not stay that way? What unfolds next is not just a stone, it's a strategy. Because in the imperial court, hammams were as much political theatres as they were bathing spaces. Behind the warm marble and soft towels, alliances were formed. Rivals tested one another. Secrets were dangled like jewels, shiny, irresistible and sharp. A smile during a massage might mean "I forgive you." A splash of water could signal a declaration of war. A shared towel, intimacy, or manipulation, depending on the day. A historical truth to root this in. The women of the harem, especially concubines, wives, and mothers of sultans, held real, undeniable influence. They didn't rule with swords or decrees, they ruled with knowledge, timing, and the manipulation of relationships. And nowhere were those relationships more exposed than in the bathhouse. Here, stripped of layers, women navigated the complex web of loyalty and survival with every gesture. A look could be a threat, a whisper could spark an execution. Kösem Sultan, one of the most powerful women in Ottoman history, was said to have orchestrated entire political shifts from within the walls of the palace hammam. Her influence stretched across generations of sultans, and some accounts suggest she vetted future consorts while they bathed, judging their potential not just by beauty or obedience, but by instinct. Whether that's true or simply the embroidery of legend doesn't matter. The point is that everyone believed it was possible. The hammam was not just a retreat, it was a chessboard, and some women played to win. The quirky detail? There were actual spies placed inside palace hammams, servants or lesser-ranked women who reported back to higher-ranking mistresses or even eunuchs. These weren't James Bond types. They were towel, folders, water pourers, hair combers. Their job was to observe, to listen, and, most importantly, not to be noticed. If someone cried too long in the cooling room, that got passed along. If someone received a secret letter during their bath, that too. There are records, faint and fragmented, of punishments delivered, because of what was overheard in steam. Some scholars debate just how calculated these bathhouse power moves were. Were these women truly strategizing over soap and rose water? Or have historians projected modern political scheming onto what was essentially a social and sacred space? Others argue the opposite, that we've underestimated just how sharp and deliberate women had to be in a system that restricted their official power. In a world where they couldn't vote or hold office, they found influence in the margins, in beauty rituals, in whispered confidences, in the timing of a compliment. You watch as the woman in silk finishes her story. Her companions sit very still, processing. One raises her brow, another smirks. They won't say if they believe every detail, but it doesn't matter. The tale has done its job. It's reminded them, and you, that this space has always been more than stone and water. It has memory. It has teeth. A younger woman nearby leans toward her aunt and asks a quiet question. Did she survive? Meaning the woman in the story. The ambitious one. The trap setter. The hunter. Her aunt shrugs and replies, "For a while," which in this context might be the most honest answer anyone could give. Because survival in these circles wasn't about decades, it was about seasons. About whether you could last one more political wave, one more rivalry, one more mood swing from a sultan or his mother. And the hammam was where you measured that time. One rinse, one massage, one half-truth at a time. You glance around the room now and see it differently. The warmth remains, the safety too. But layered under it is something colder, smarter. The understanding that power wears many faces, and sometimes it wears nothing at all. One of the women laughs suddenly, disrupting the mood. She says something about fig paste and overeager eunuchs, and the spell breaks. Everyone chuckles, the sharp edge dulls, but it never truly disappears. In the hammam, even the laughter carries shadows. You rise from your cushion, still warm, still relaxed, but your ears are sharper now. You know the sound of strategy when you hear it. And in this room, even soap can be slippery with intention. The steam is thin now, but the air still shimmers with warmth and memory. You've rinsed, rested, and been told a dozen stories you weren't meant to hear. But as you follow an older woman through a narrow corridor into a quieter chamber, it becomes clear that the journey through the hammam isn't quite over. The mood here is different, less performative, less political. The light is softer, filtered through a small lattice window near the ceiling. The walls are bare save for a few herbs hanging from cords in the corners. And in the centre of the room sits a low wooden stool worn smooth by use and time. A midwife waits beside it, her pestimal simple, her face lined but calm. You've arrived at one of the oldest layers of the hammam, the place of the wise women. This is where magic still breathes. The woman smiles at you, not kindly, not sternly, just knowingly, and motions for you to sit. You oblige. She begins by pressing her palm to your forehead, then to the base of your neck, her fingers surprisingly cool. She doesn't ask what's wrong, she doesn't need to. Her hands tell her more than you ever could. This corner of the hammam is where the physical and the mystical merge. Here, women come not just to cleanse or socialise, but to be seen by someone who understands things doctors don't. Fertility, grief, cycles of blood and moon. The ache in your lower back that isn't illness but history. This isn't medicine, at least not by today's standards, but it's healing all the same. The woman begins to speak softly, not to you, but to the herbs she's selecting. She plucks dried sage, a few crushed rose petals, a sprig of mint, and something pungent you can't identify. She mixes them in a clay bowl and adds a dash of water from the basin. The steam rising from the blend smells earthy, almost bitter. She tells you to close your eyes. You do. Historically, midwives, eBay in the Ottoman Empire, were more than birth attendants. They were guardians of feminine knowledge, repositories of herbal lore, spiritual advisors, and often protectors of secrets too heavy to carry alone. They were the first to know a girl had become a woman, and the last to whisper blessings over a dying grandmother. And many of them worked, at least part of the time, in the hammam. It made sense. The hammam, already associated with cleansing, was also linked to fertility and protection. Women came here after childbirth, after miscarriage, before their wedding nights, or when their bodies betrayed them in ways they couldn't explain. And they sought out women like this, part priestess, part scientist, all intuition. A quirky fact, some of these midwives believed that certain herbs were jealous of others and wouldn't work if stored too close together. In their homes, bundles of dried plants were hung apart to prevent squabbles. Within the hammam, each herb had its own vessel, often marked with symbols, a crescent moon, a star, sometimes just a single scratch to signify lineage. These weren't just cures, they were stories. You feel the woman's hand at your abdomen now. She presses gently, her fingertips circling, pausing. She mutters something under her breath. A prayer? A diagnosis? It doesn't matter. You trust her. You feel safe even when you don't understand. She adds oil to your wrists, myrtle, perhaps, and touches your temples with her thumbs. Whatever she's doing, it's working. You feel lighter. Not miraculously healed, but steadier. More rooted in yourself. There's a scholarly debate, of course, about where midwifery ended and magic began. Some argue that these women practiced empirical, effective treatments long before Western medicine gave them credit. Others insist their work was mostly symbolic, relying on belief and community rather than biology. But anyone who's sat under their care, who's cried into their shoulder or woken with their herbs under the pillow knows better than to call it superstition. A girl enters now, no older than 12, led by her aunt. She's quiet, shy, eyes darting around the room. You don't need to ask. This is her first real visit. She's here for the old rituals, the ones whispered over generations, the ones that say, you are changing, but you are not alone. The midwife greets her without words, touching her cheek, guiding her to a bench, and preparing a mixture of crushed date pits and olive oil. Not a cure, a blessing. She will leave this room knowing that womanhood, while complicated, can be kind. Another woman enters next, her belly round and heavy with late pregnancy. She's here for comfort, for reassurance, maybe even to ease the child's arrival. The midwife seats her, massages her feet, murmurs about the moon cycle. She checks her pulse, not with tools, but with time-honoured touch. She whispers the name of a plant that should be steeped tonight. She tells the woman to sleep on her left side. She kisses her forehead. You're reminded now that the hammam isn't just a luxury, it's a passage, a ritual, a loop in time that every woman steps into eventually, maiden, mother, elder. And in the corner of it all sits the midwife, the herbalist, the keeper of thresholds. She doesn't need applause, she doesn't seek attention, but she holds the lives of women in her hands more gently than anyone else ever could. The girl's aunt gathers the young one up and whispers something in her ear. The pregnant woman stands slowly with help, nodding thanks. You rise too. Not because you're done, but because something in you has been acknowledged. The midwife touches your hand in parting, a blessing, or maybe just a grounding. Outside this chamber, the hammam continues. Gossip, rinses, massages, rituals. But here, in this quiet corner, a different kind of knowledge has just passed through your skin and settled somewhere deeper. You walk back into the steam knowing that the body isn't just a vessel. It's a history book, and women like her know how to read every page. You return to the main chamber and notice, perhaps for the first time, how different the women look now, not just cleaner or more perfumed, but lighter. Like something heavy has slipped off their shoulders and disappeared into the mist. You see it in the way they lean against one another, in the lazy arch of a foot stretched out across a warm slab, in the comfort with which they move. And among them, barely noticed but unmistakably present, are the women who entered the hammam with the fewest layers, not just of clothing, but of privilege. They sit in the corners. They wait their turn with patience shaped by necessity. Their pestimals are simpler, worn thin from many washes. Their laughter, when it comes, is a little quieter, as if always measuring itself against the room. These are the poorer women, the working women, the peasants visiting from the outskirts of the city. And yet here in the hammam, they occupy the same space as the merchant's wife, the scribe's sister, even the governor's cousin. This isn't utopia. Class doesn't vanish in the bathhouse, but something does change. Inside these warm marble walls, every woman is stripped to her body, and sometimes that's enough to level the playing field, at least for a little while. You notice one of them now, a younger woman with calloused feet and fingers stained with henna, not for beauty but from hours spent mixing herbs or dyeing fabric. Her hair is wrapped in a scarf, not silk but rough cotton. She's washing an older woman's back, one who wears gold bangles and has a voice like syrup. There's no servant-master dynamic here. This is exchange. One scrubs, the other hums a song. They speak not as strangers, but as women who have bathed in the same water enough times to forget who's supposed to be more important. Historically, the hammam was one of the rare public institutions that allowed for cross-class interaction. For a small fee, almost any woman could access it. And while elite bathhouses did exist, with private hours and velvet cushions and imported oils, the majority of urban hammams were shared spaces where women from all walks of life intersected. Rich or poor, young or old, everyone came to be cleansed, to sweat, to gossip, to rest. Of course, there were unspoken rules. The wealthy claimed the best spots, closer to the central slab or near the warmest fountains. Their pestimals were finer and their attendants more numerous, but they didn't occupy the hammam alone. Around them moved the others, the washerwomen, the baker's daughters, the girls from the provinces whose accents gave them away within 3 syllables. They weren't invisible. In fact, many of them were essential. A quirky truth, some of these so-called common women became fixtures in the hammam community, trusted gossip sources, skilled masseuses, reliable keepers of unfiltered truth. A midwife from the outer districts might gain more respect than a silk-draped visitor from the palace, because she knew people, because she'd scrubbed backs and whispered secrets and kept confidences that could shatter reputations. Class mattered, but trust, that ran on a different currency entirely. You observe now as a pair of sisters, clearly from modest means, share a bar of soap between them, giggling as they take turns scrubbing each other's arms. One slips and nearly falls. The other catches her and scolds her with theatrical exasperation. Their bond is obvious, their joy too. You catch the eye of an older woman watching them, her bangles thick, her pestimal crisp, and she smiles genuinely, as if remembering her own childhood, when laughter in the bath wasn't a luxury, but a given. And yet the class line is never fully erased. You see it in the smallest gestures, A wealthy woman might avoid sitting too close to someone she doesn't know. A servant might wait until her employer is finished before stepping under the water. Conversations sometimes pause when a newcomer enters, a quick recalibration of tone, vocabulary, posture. Still, something softens here. In a world that usually holds class boundaries like walls, the hammam holds them more like curtains, still present, still dividing, but movable. You can reach through them, you can see the outline of the other side. There's a scholarly debate about just how egalitarian these spaces really were. Some historians claim the hammam functioned as a brief escape from social stratification, a space where shared ritual and nudity created communities. Others argue this ideal is romanticised, that hierarchies persisted even in the steam, just dressed in warmer colours. And both are probably right. The hammam wasn't a revolution, it was a pause, but sometimes a pause is enough. You notice now a woman seated alone near one of the smaller fountains. Her face is tired, her hands folded in her lap. She wears no jewellery. Her pestimel has a tear at the edge, but her posture is serene. Around her, women talk and joke and squabble, but she simply sits, present. She's not excluded. No one shuns her. She is part of the room, even in her stillness. A younger woman brings her a bowl of water without being asked. Another passes her a slice of orange. She nods in thanks, and the world continues. In the hammam, solidarity doesn't need speeches. It lives in glances, in gestures, in soap passed from one hand to another. It lives in stories that start with, "When I was your age," and in the sharing of oils too expensive for one woman to buy alone. It's built not on ideals, but on moments. Moments where class doesn't vanish but softens just enough to make room for connection. You leave the chamber slowly, glancing one last time at the mix of women gathered there. They are not the same, but for this afternoon they shared something. Warm stone, steam, laughter, silence, all of it together. And maybe that's the most radical thing of all. Evening leaned into the hammam slowly, like a cat settling beside your legs. So gradual you almost don't notice it until the light filtering through the domes changes colour. The sun shifts from white to honey to something almost amber, catching in the steam like fire trapped in a bottle. The water flows the same, the air stays warm, the rituals continue, but the mood changes. The energy that once buzzed with social games and sly glances softens into something quieter, slower, riskier. Because now, with daylight fading, you've entered the hour of possibility, the secret time, the time of after-dark visits. It starts with a whisper behind a screen, a woman rewrapping her pestimel tighter than necessary, then loosening it the moment she thinks she's alone. Another appearing not from the main entrance, but from a side door, escorted by someone who disappears just as quickly. These aren't mistakes, these are intention. Night is approaching, and the hammam is slipping into its most intimate self. You weren't planning to stay this long, but you're not surprised to find that many others have. As it turns out, the hammam after hours is not always empty. In fact, in certain corners of Ottoman society, it was exactly the opposite. Officially, bathhouses had closing times, rules, schedules. They operated under the watchful eye of mosque authorities, city governors, and concerned moralists, but unofficially. After sundown, the hammam became a very different kind of space, one that invited desire, secrecy, and freedom too delicate for daylight. You sit now in a dim alcove near the side chamber, watching shadows flicker against the walls. A pair of women pass by you, wrapped loosely, laughing too softly. One of them glances back, not at you exactly, but in your direction. Her eyes linger, then she's gone. You feel it in your chest, like a stone dropped in still water. Something has shifted. There are stories about what happens in the hammam at night. The official ones say, nothing. A cleaning crew, maybe a few late visitors. The unofficial ones, however, they speak of rendezvous, of messages passed in oil-soaked cloth, of secret lovers, sometimes men smuggled in through service tunnels, more often women meeting in the safety of steam. Here's a historical truth tucked into all this. While rare, some hammams were accessible after hours by arrangement, especially in larger cities like Istanbul. You'd need the favour of the owner, a well-placed bribe, or the right kind of silence. Sometimes the rich rented the space for a private visit, sometimes a favour was owed, sometimes someone just looked the other way, a fringe detail, barely preserved in scraps of diary and folk song. Women used to leave small marks, carved into soap pressed into towels or drawn with oil on the edge of the stone slab to signal interest. A spiral, a flower, a bird, innocent unless you knew what to look for. Messages passed not in letters, but in scent and gesture. The hammam at night was not for everyone. It wasn't just about romance or rebellion. It was about escape. From control, from duty, from being watched. After dark, the pressure lifted just slightly, like a corset unhooked by trusted hands. You could move without explanation, speak more freely, lie back without bracing yourself against someone's opinion. And still, there were risks. One story whispers through the stones of a nobleman's daughter who slipped away to meet her servant in the hammam after midnight. They were careful, for months no one knew. Then one night someone talked, the girl vanished. The servant was married off to a distant village. No names were ever written down, but the song remains, sung by older women under their breath when the bathwater gets too still. A caution and a tribute. There's a scholarly debate about these nighttime meetings, as you might expect. Some argue that they're mostly fantasy, tales spun by Orientalist writers and European travellers who projected their desires onto the mystery of the hammam. Others say these stories had to be subtle, hidden in metaphor, because no one in power wanted to record the truth. That women carved out space for themselves in the hammam's shadows, not because they were encouraged to, but because they had no other choice. You glance around now and see the last wave of guests thinning out. The older women have mostly gone, wrapped tight and whispering prayers under their breath. The mothers have gathered their daughters, pressing combs into hair and warning them not to catch cold. But a few linger. Women without chaperones. Women with stories in their eyes. A girl brushes oil onto her thighs slowly, watching herself in the reflection of the water basin. Another sits beside her, close enough that their arms touch. Neither speaks. Your own body has settled into a sort of ache, not unpleasant, just aware. Your skin smells of orange blossom. Your neck still carries the thumbprint of a massage. And yet you stay, not because you need more washing, but because something in you wants to see, or be seen, or maybe both. A telak passes by with a candle, lighting small alcove lamps as she goes. The light glows gold against the tile, making every shadow longer, every glance more meaningful. The hammam no longer feels like a place of purification, it feels like a secret. You remember suddenly the stories women used to tell during weddings, of cousins who ran away, of girls who fell ill and recovered in private. The ones who knew too much about oils and infusions and always had a knowing smile. No one said it outright, but everyone knew where those stories were born, right here, in these chambers, after dark. You rise slowly, wrapping your pestamol with care. You're not afraid, but you're aware. This version of the hammam is older than rules, older than religion. It belongs to the women who stayed late, who dared to want more than cleanliness, who wanted connection, or quiet, or heat, or something they couldn't name, and even now, centuries later, the stone remembers. You wake slowly, not from sleep exactly, but from something like it, a fog of heat and scent and stillness that has wrapped itself around your bones. The hammam is almost empty now, the echoes are gentler, the marble cooled beneath your feet, and only a few quiet figures linger in the dressing chamber. The spell of steam has finally begun to lift, revealing a new feeling underneath, resistance. It starts small. A woman brushing her hair too slowly, as if daring time to move her. Another lingers by the fountain, pouring water over her feet long after she's clean. One more tightens her sash with just a little too much precision, like she's postponing her return to the outside world. You recognize it instantly, the ache of not wanting to go back, of having tasted something inside these walls that doesn't exist anywhere else. And it's not just comfort, it's not just beauty, it's agency. Throughout Ottoman history, authorities, religious and political alike, have tried more than once to restrict the freedoms of the hammam. Not ban them entirely, even they knew that would spark unrest. But limit them, clamp down on the singing, shorten the hours, forbid the mixing of social classes, and, of course, monitor what women were doing when men weren't around to supervise. You watch now as two women in the corner exchange a glance. Nothing overt, but filled with understanding. The hammam isn't just a sanctuary. It's a site of quiet, ongoing resistance. Not the kind with banners and shouted slogans, but the kind stitched into daily life, choosing to linger, to whisper, to laugh. even when laughter itself becomes suspicious. One of the more fascinating historical facts: in the 16th century, a decree was issued forbidding women from spending too much time in bathhouses. Authorities claimed it encouraged idleness, unnecessary display, and, most suspiciously, female conspiracy. In other words, when too many women spent too much time together with no men around, the empire got nervous. And it wasn't paranoia, it was realism. Because inside the hammam, women did conspire, against unwanted marriages, against cruel in-laws, against the crushing boredom of domestic duty. They built networks of mutual aid, arranged escapes, offered support for women caught in violence, shared knowledge that wasn't meant to survive. The hammam was never just about scrubbing. It was about strategy. It was about knowing. There's a fringe story rarely told about a group of washerwomen in Bursa who quietly organised a mutual support circle through their local hammam. They pooled money for widows, hid runaway girls, and even sabotaged a suitor who tried to marry into their neighbourhood with too many secrets. Official records barely mention them, but in local oral histories there were legends. The scented rebels, they're called. The women who plotted in rosewater and whispered while folding towels. You hear something similar now. Two women, older, seated on low cushions, talking in coded tones. One says her roof is leaking, and the other responds that some homes need better stones. Anyone else would hear idle chat. But you know better. There's a daughter involved, a husband who drinks, a secret being kept, and maybe not for much longer. The hammam has always carried this duality, softness wrapped around steel. You see it in the way women scrub each other's backs while plotting to move relatives out of dangerous homes, in how they trade recipes for sweets and tinctures for fertility in the same breath, in how jokes about neighbour's new servant conceal warnings about her real intentions. Every act here is layered, every kindness has depth. There's scholarly debate, as expected, about whether this resistance was conscious or accidental. Were women aware that their hammam rituals undermined control? Or did they simply take what freedom they could get, without framing it as rebellion? The answer likely depends on the woman. Some came here to escape, others came to fight. Most did both, without saying either out loud. A young woman enters now, wrapped in damp linen, eyes red. No one asks why, no one needs to. An older woman beside her opens her arms. The girl leans in, and for a few minutes they just breathe together. No problem is solved, but something shifts, something loosens. That too is resistance. Choosing connection over isolation, choosing care over silence. You dry your skin with a soft cotton cloth, running it slowly over your shoulders, your chest, your thighs. It's not indulgence, it's declaration. This body belongs to me, this moment belongs to us. Outside, the rules are rigid. Here they bend. You begin to pack up your things, but not quickly, no one does. There's a practiced slowness to the final steps, oiling your hands again, braiding your hair with care, folding your pestimel deliberately. It's not laziness, it's refusal. A soft, stubborn insistence that you deserve time. As you move toward the outer door, you hear a song begin, quiet, steady, not for performance, but for memory. A lullaby, maybe, or a poem. You don't recognize the words, but the meaning is clear. We were here. We bathed, we healed, we shared, we survived. You pause at the threshold, looking back. The women still seated, still shining. The marble, still warm with the day's secrets. The steam, thinner now but still curling around the pillars like it knows how to hold everything you've left behind. The hammam may be watched, regulated, judged, but it remains, because no decree can fully erase the memory of what happens when women gather freely. No empire, no matter how powerful, can scrub that clean. The wooden doors creak open just enough to let in the sound of unfamiliar voices, clipped, nasal, curiously amused. You hear boots on tile. Not slippers, the rhythm is wrong. There's no grace in the sound, only the eager clatter of outsiders trying to act like they belong. The language, not Ottoman Turkish, not even Arabic. It's French, you think, or maybe Dutch. You don't need to understand it to know what it means. The foreigners have arrived. You step aside instinctively, pressing yourself into the curve of a cool marble pillar as three women make their way into the hammam, accompanied by an apologetic-looking eunuch and a younger translator trying to keep up. The visitors are overdressed, lace collars wilting from the humidity, parasols awkwardly tucked under arms, boots too tight for tile. One of them clutches a small notebook, already scribbling as she mutters observations under her breath. Another has removed only her gloves, clearly unsure of the next step. The third, taller, bolder, has already undone her jacket and stares openly at the half-naked women around her like they're exhibits in a gallery. You know this look. You've felt this look. The colonial gaze. Curious, condescending, fascinated in all the wrong ways. These women aren't here to bathe. They're here to collect, to write, to confirm their assumptions. And unfortunately for the hammam, they're going to make sure the rest of Europe reads about it. Historically, European travellers in the 18th and 19th centuries became obsessed with Ottoman hammams. Men couldn't access them, of course, though that didn't stop many from writing wildly fictionalised accounts based on second-hand gossip and over-ripe imagination. But some women, especially aristocratic wives, writers, and the occasional artist, were allowed in, often by special arrangement or through diplomatic connections, and once they got inside, they treated the hammam like a stage set for their own private fantasy. One famous English woman described it as a sensual paradise where women lounged like odalisques, unashamed and uncivilized. She called the women plump and lazy, and remarked, with both fascination and disgust, at how freely they touched each other. Another claimed the hammam was the Eastern woman's only joy, painting a picture of exotic idleness that had little to do with reality and everything to do with European ideas about Eastern excess and decay. You watch now as the visitors make their way into the dressing room. One fans herself dramatically. Another whispers something to the third, and they both giggle, eyes fixed on a young Turkish woman adjusting her towel. She notices, blushes, turns away. You feel your fists tighten. The air doesn't feel warm anymore. It feels exposed. The translator, to his credit, is doing his best to keep up. He explains the purpose of the pestimal, the layout of the chambers, the sequence of the bathing ritual, but they're barely listening. One of the women is sketching. You catch the quick flick of her pencil, the way she glances up only long enough to capture the curve of someone's back, the twist of a braid, the arch of a neck in profile. She's building her own version of this world, one that will likely be published in a travelogue back home, with words like mysterious and decadent thrown around like olive pits. And here's the curious, almost comic twist. Many of these travelogues, while dripping in eroticism and Orientalist nonsense, actually boosted Western interest in hammams. Paris, London, and even New York would eventually open Turkish baths, styled loosely after Ottoman designs, though always adapted for European tastes. In those cities, the hammam became not a women's refuge, but a men's indulgence. Smoking rooms, marble lounges, nude sculptures standing in for real bodies. There's a scholarly debate about how damaging these Western depictions truly were. Some argue they exoticized and objectified Ottoman women, reducing their cultural traditions to fantasies. Others suggest that they inadvertently documented practices and rituals that might otherwise have been lost to time. Of course, neither position fully comforts the women who were watched, drawn, translated, and fictionalized without consent. You move now into the next chamber, hoping for space, but the visitors follow. One has finally removed her jacket and seems amazed that her skin is already damp. She dabs at her cheeks with a monogrammed handkerchief. Another tries to sit on the belly stone and immediately winces. It's too hot for her. She lifts her skirt and fans her legs, muttering something about barbaric heating methods. The older Turkish women watch from a distance, eyes narrowed, lips tight. They're not afraid. They're annoyed. This isn't novelty, this is their space. One woman, a midwife by the look of her, rises from her place and walks deliberately across the stone to confront the translator. She speaks in low, sharp Turkish. You don't catch every word, but the meaning is clear. They've seen enough. They can go now. He nods down, stammers, and begins to usher the visitors toward the outer chamber. They protest. One tries to sneak another sketch, but they move, eventually sulking and muttering out Oriental attitudes and ungrateful hosts. As the door shuts behind them, the room exhales. Someone spits lightly into the fountain. Another lets out a long theatrical sigh. Laughter bubbles up. Not cruel, but cathartic. One woman imitates the visitor's prissy walk, eliciting hoots and applause. For a few minutes, the hammam becomes a stage of mockery, a way to reclaim the space, to scrape off the gaze that had settled like dust on marble. You smile, but there's a bitter aftertaste. Because even now, centuries later, those depictions linger. The paintings, the poems, the Sandler stories, they've painted a version of this place that's hard to scrub away. A version where hammams are about nudity, not community. About exotic spectacle, not sisterhood. But if you stay long enough, if you listen, you'll hear the real version rise up through the mist. The one that belongs to the women who built it, bathed in it, passed their wisdom through it. The one the visitors never stayed long enough to see. It's not mysterious. It's not decadent. It's ours. You thought you'd seen all the corners by now, bathed in every basin, leaned against every warm marble bench, heard every whisper the hammam could offer. But somehow, just as you prepare to leave, a quiet gesture from one of the telaks changes your course. She's older, with the no-nonsense calm of someone who's spent a lifetime moving through steam. She crooks her finger, points toward a narrow hallway behind a curtain of hanging beads. You glance around. No one stops you, no one seems surprised. So you follow. The corridor feels different, drier, dimmer. The sound of dripping water fades, replaced by a muffled rustle, cloth maybe, fabric being coloured or unfurled. You step through the beads and into a small chamber, and immediately the scent changes. Less rose, more sandalwood. Less perfume, more earth. The room is filled with fabrics, bolts of silk, velvet pouches, folded linen, and baskets overflowing with herbs, pins, and tiny glinting objects. It takes a moment to realise where you are. This is the hammam's atelier, the beauty chamber, and here, transformation is its own ritual. A young woman sits cross-legged on the floor, grinding coal in a tiny dish. Another arranges jars of henna along a low table, each labelled in spidery Ottoman script. A third is weaving dried lavender into braided ribbons, humming softly. These aren't attendants, they're artisans, cosmetic whisperers, not here to bathe, but to reveal, because after the scrubbing, the oiling, the laughter and gossip and political manoeuvring, there's still one final act in the hammam's theatre, the preparation to emerge. This is where a woman puts herself back together, not the way the world demands, but the way she chooses. Historically, many hammams had rooms like this, tiny, tucked away spaces where women could apply makeup, braid hair, dye fingertips, and adorn themselves in ways that extended beyond hygiene. After all, what's the point of washing the body if not to celebrate it afterward? These rooms weren't just about vanity. They were about presentation. Not for men, but for society. For rival women, for yourself. A kind of self-defense painted on in red, gold, and smoke. You watch as one woman carefully lines her eyes with kohl, tilting her head back slightly. Her fingers are practiced, steady. The result isn't dramatic, just defined. She doesn't look like someone else. She looks like herself, but clearer, sharper. Another dips a comb in clove oil and runs it through her damp curls, releasing a spicy aroma. A third woman opens a tiny box of surma, black as night, and flicks her gaze toward the polished metal mirror on the wall. There's a quiet, intentional rhythm to all of it. No chit-chat, no giggling. This is focus, refinement, final touches. A strange but charming historical detail. Some Ottoman women believe that the first thing you applied after a bath set your mood for the day, or the night. Choose jasmine oil? Expect compliments. Choose pomegranate tint for your lips? Expect drama. So women took it seriously. They chose their adornments like spells. Each jar, each comb, each scrap of silk, an ingredient in their personal alchemy. You sit beside a woman now as she prepares her henna. She smiles at you, dipping her fingers into a bowl the colour of dried saffron. She asks if you'd like some. You nod. She presses the paste into your palms, spreading it across your skin like a secret being sealed. It's warm, slightly gritty, fragrant with a sweetness you can't quite place. You let your hands rest, open and patient, while the paste dries. When it flakes away, hours from now, it will leave a rusty orange mark. A symbol, a souvenir. There's a scholarly debate tucked here too, about whether this beautification was empowerment or performance. Did women reclaim their appearance here, creating beauty for themselves in the safety of an all-female space? Or were they preparing themselves to return to a world that demanded they look a certain way? Controlled, palatable, pleasing. But maybe the answer is simpler. Maybe it's about transition. The hammam isn't just a place you enter. It's a place you emerge from. You can't leave it the same. You've been scrubbed, softened, challenged, seen. And so this final act of adornment isn't about erasing what happened inside, it's about honouring it. You glance at your reflection in a polished brass plate hung above the table. You look Real. Tired. Alive. You smooth your eyebrows with a drop of rose oil, not because you need to, just because it feels good, just because it's part of the ritual. One last quiet offering to yourself before you return to a world that never asked if you needed softness. The women around you begin to gather their things. Scarves are tied, jewellery reattached, faces checked. One woman adds a final dab of rose petal balm to her lips, then stands like a queen preparing to step onto a stage. Another slips silver rings onto each finger. A third adjusts her sash until it rests just right, like armour. A fringe detail. In some neighbourhoods, the walk home from the hammam was its own kind of parade. Women, freshly bathed and beautifully dressed, would walk slowly, heads high, gossip flowing, eyes sharp. They were admired, envied, sometimes even proposed to during these walks. Not because they were clean, because they were radiant, because they had walked through fire and come out scented like lilies. You rise, wrapping your newly hennied hands in a soft cloth. The room around you hums with small, sacred movement. A final comb through hair, a kiss on the cheek, a last glance in the mirror. Then quietly everyone begins to go. You follow them, through the beads, through the cooling room, past the fountains, past the now silent belly stone that has held generations of laughter, secrets and steam. The hammam is dimmer now, almost empty, but it still hums. At the threshold, a girl dips her fingers in water and touches her heart, her lips, her forehead. A farewell, a blessing. And you? You step into your sandals with a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. You wrap your scarf a little tighter, not to hide, but to frame yourself. You smell of cloves and rose and orange peel. You feel deliberate. Outside, the city waits. But you do not return to it unarmed. The first thing that hits you is the wind. After hours wrapped in dense warmth and steam, the outside air feels like a memory you almost forgot, sharp, restless, unperfumed. It brushes across your cheeks, cool and teasing, like a lover that knows exactly what it's doing. Your skin tingles in response, flushed and sensitive from scrubbing, scented with oils that still cling to your pulse points. And just like that, you're back in the world, but not quite the same. The street outside the hammam is familiar. Stone paths, low rooftops, the smell of bread curling from nearby stalls, but now it feels slightly unreal, like you've stepped out of a dream and into a painting. The noise seems louder, the colours more intense, and the people, well, they haven't changed. But you have. You catch sight of other women emerging from the hammam too, one by one, in small clusters and pairs. They move differently now, slower, taller. Even the quiet ones carry themselves like something important just happened inside them. And maybe it did. Maybe they just got clean. Or maybe they were reminded of who they are underneath all the layers life makes them wear. One woman adjusts her headscarf, smoothing it over a freshly oiled braid. Another pulls her pestimel tighter over her dress, not with shame but with an air of completion, as if to say, I have nothing to prove now. They don't speak loudly. They don't need to. Their bodies speak for them, refreshed, confident, calm in a way that doesn't come from sleep or silence, but from being among other women who see you and don't expect anything in return. There's a man watching you. Of course, leaning near a fig vendor, pretending not to look. His eyes follow the women like he's trying to decode something, but he won't find what he's looking for. The hammam doesn't leave clues for men, it leaves afterglow, and that's not something they're meant to understand. Historically, this is one of the most misunderstood parts of the hammam's role in Ottoman society, the re-entry, the aftermath. It wasn't just a matter of hygiene. Women returning from the bath were observed, sometimes admired, sometimes feared. There were even superstitions about it. Some believed a woman was more dangerous just after bathing, more seductive, more powerful, more likely to speak her mind. One poem from the 17th century describes a freshly bathed woman as the moon slipped from her cloud, too hot to touch, too clean to be touched. You make your way down the street now, footsteps light on the stone. A fruit seller nods at you. A child glances at your bright hennaed hands and grins before being tugged away by her mother. The world doesn't stop for your transformation, but it notices, just a little. You pass a fountain and pause, not to wash again. No, not after all that work, but to look. Your reflection in the rippling surface is unfamiliar at first. Your cheeks are flushed, your eyes brighter than you remember, your lips tinted naturally from the warmth. And beneath it all is a quiet pride. You did something today. Not work, not obligum. Something older than that. Something that matters simply because it was for you. Behind you, someone calls out your name. You turn, Otisi. It's a cousin. Or maybe a neighbour, someone you've shared food with, gossiped with, nodded to in the market. She's noticed the henna. She teases you gently. "Who's the lucky man?" she says with a wink. But you just smile and say, "No one, just a woman." She laughs and shakes her head, but you see the respect in her eyes. You've done what all women crave but rarely name. You've claimed time, and that in a world that demands your service every waking moment is revolutionary. There's a strange and lovely fringe belief found in some Ottoman folk traditions that the scent a woman wears when she leaves the hammam lingers in the air for 7 days, marking her path like the tail of a comet. Some say it draws good luck, others say it warns jealous spirits to stay away. Either way, it's a reminder that the bath doesn't end at the threshold. It follows you, and it does. As you walk to people give you space without knowing why. You smile more freely, your thoughts feel clearer. It's not just that your body is clean, it's that your inner noise has quieted. You're not trying to please anyone right now, you're not racing toward a chore, you're just moving, like yourself. You return home eventually, through this gate, up the steps, across the threshold. Familiar smells greet you. Lentils simmering, bread cooling on the windowsill. The dry scent of dust and cloth and home. Someone calls your name from another room. You answer, but gently. They'll wait. In the mirror, your skin glows in the fading afternoon light. You unwrap your scarf slowly, hanging it with care. Your clothes, worn over your clean skin, feel heavier now. You loosen them just a little. You don't want to lose the feeling just yet. And here's the truth. The one nobody says out loud. Part of you wishes you could go back already. Not to scrub again, but to sit in that echoing dome among the steam and the stories and the bodies that ask nothing from you. But that's what makes it sort of sacred. You can't live in the hammam. You can only return to it. There's a scholarly question, still debated. Did the hammam empower women, or did it distract them from the limits of their lives? Did it offer real freedom, or just a temporary illusion of it? But when you've been inside, really inside, you know the answer isn't a thesis. It's a feeling, like silk across skin, like oil sinking into sore muscles, like laughter rising from a hot slab of marble and echoing into forever. You sit at the window and let the evening find you. The city keeps moving, but you are still. You are not untouched by the world. But for a while, the world could not touch you. The next morning comes quietly. No trumpet of birdsong, no dramatic sunrise, just the slow light of an Ottoman sky spreading across the tiled rooftops and sliding through your shutters. Your skin is still soft, faintly perfumed with the remnants of clove and orange peel. The henna on your palms has darkened overnight into a warm reddish brown, bold against your skin like a message you haven't finished reading. And as you sit up and stretch, you realise something. You're still carrying the hammam inside you. It lives in the small shifts, the way you braid your hair without rushing, the way your breath moves deeper into your chest, the way you reach for your water bowl with a grace that feels practiced. Not posed, but present. You didn't walk out of the hammam and snap back into the shape the world carved for you. No, you've held on to something, a softness, a centre. Down in the kitchen, someone is already baking bread. The scent of yeast and sesame wraps around you like a shawl. On another day, this might have marked the beginning of the routine, but today something is different. Your body remembers the belly stone, your hands remember the gentle slap of water, and your mind, it's still turning over stories. Because that's what the hammam truly was, a vault, not just of steam and tiles and oil, but of memory, of womanhood carved into hot stone and passed from one body to another without a single word having to explain it. You find yourself thinking about all the women you saw there, about their rituals, their laughter, their glances, the girl being scouted, the aunt who massaged her niece's legs with olive oil, the widow who sang while she combed her hair. You carry their images like pressed flowers tucked into the pages of a book. One day you'll go back. You'll hear new stories, see new faces. Some of the old ones will return too, because the hammam is cyclical, a constellation of bodies that shift and orbit and pass through, always returning to the warm core of shared space. But before that happens, you begin to notice how the world tests you. The hammam gave you stillness, but outside these walls, things move fast. Chores, obligations, noise. The structure presses in, trying to fold you back into shape. There's a boy on the street who calls out something unnecessary. A vendor who looks too long, a neighbour who comments on your appearance with a smile too tight to be friendly. You don't flinch, but you notice. You meet each gaze with your own, not in defiance, not in defence, but in ownership, because now you remember. The body they're trying to name does not belong to them. It's the same body that was massaged with care, that was sung to, that glowed beneath candlelight. While other women made space for you without asking questions, you are claimed, not by them, by you. There's a lesser-known custom in some towns, almost forgotten now, where women would wear a small sprig of dried lavender behind their ear the day after visiting the hammam. A silent signal to other women, I've just come back. It wasn't about showing off, it was about recognition. It said, I am softer today, handle me gently. And more than that, you can ask me what I remembered while I was inside, you consider doing the same. There's lavender drying in a bundle near the kitchen. You tuck one stem into your hair, not because anyone will recognise it, but because you will. That's enough. Throughout the day, as you move through the rhythms of cooking and errands, you begin to notice other signals. A woman in the market with oiled hair still damp at the roots. Another whose palms are tinted just like yours. You pass each other and don't stop, but you know there's something sacred in that anonymity, in being part of a quiet shared history. The hammam is never just a memory, it's a marker, a reminder that beneath all the layers of duty, expectation and restraint, you have a place where you are known, where you are seen not for what you offer others, but simply for existing. And maybe that's why it's lasted. Through centuries of reform, surveillance, invasion, and imitation. Through changes in empire, shifts in custom, Western sketches and erotic fantasies, the hammam stayed. It adapted. It endured. Because women needed it to. There's scholarly debate about whether such places still hold the same weight today. If they've lost their meaning, if they've become just tourist attractions, their power diluted. But that debate misses the point entirely. The real hammam isn't measured in bricks or domes or steam temperature. It lives in women's memories, in their bodies, in their stories. It's in the mother who brings her daughter to be seen and cherished. In the widow who returns, not to remember her husband, but to remember herself. In the young woman who steps out of her pestimol and into her own skin for the first time, realizing it is not something to hide, but something to hold. You spend the evening slower than usual. You oil your feet again before bed. You rinse your face with water, not just to clean, but to mark the closing of a day, a ritual, a kindness. The moonlight catches your reflection in a window pane, and for a brief moment you swear you see steam again, a trick of the light, or maybe not, because that's the final secret of the hammam. It never fully lets you go. Even when your skin no longer smells of rosewater, even when the henna fades, it stays in your spine, in your gaze, in the way you carry yourself when no one's watching. So you climb into bed, not clean, not beautiful, but restored. You close your eyes. The marble is gone. The laughter, distant. But still in the quiet you can hear it. A splash, a sigh, a song, and you remember. You are part of something ancient, and it remembers you too. You're still awake, just barely. That strange floaty space between dreaming and thinking, where your body is heavy but your mind still flickering with the echoes of steam and candlelight. And as you lie there, blanket tucked under your chin, maybe a fan humming in the corner, you realise something gentle but powerful. You didn't just visit a place tonight. You passed through layers of a world built entirely by and for women. And you were invited in, not to be entertained, not to be titillated, but to understand. The hammam wasn't a backdrop. It was the beating heart of an unspoken social contract where women could be political, private, sacred, playful, rebellious, sensual, and completely themselves, all within the same warm stone walls, where secrets were safe and beauty wasn't something sold or performed, but shared and claimed. You walked through steam and streers. You sat beside power disguised in pestimols. You saw love passed hand to hand in rose-scented bowls. You watched women resist quietly, with time, with tenderness, with truth. You learned the weight of a gaze, the meaning of a massage, the sharpness of a laugh when no one is pretending. And now, you lie there, heart softened, head full, knowing this: the hammam is still with you, in every act of care you choose, In every ritual that grounds you, in every time you say, "This is mine," whether it's your body, your story, your silence, or your space. So rest now. Let your breath slow. The marble is cooling, the candles are dim. You've heard the last splash, the last whisper, the last sigh. And if you dream tonight, maybe you'll find yourself back there, where the water runs hot. The air smells of citrus and sandalwood, and women are always waiting just on the other side of the steam.